Chapter 46-48. Old Man Pan and the others welcomed Fengjiu into the hall. They didn't dare to sit at the front, so they invited Fengjiu to sit at the front while they sat on the left and right. Compared to the Pan family's cautious and nervous adults, the Pan family's children, especially Bo Qing, were very excited. From time to time, he would gather around Mu Chen and Mu Yu and excitedly tell them that he had already started learning martial arts and was learning very well. Fengjiu glanced at the children and smiled. Then, she looked at the Pan family's old master and said, "My name is Fengjiu, and I am the mother of these 3 children. Some time ago, something happened, and the children were stranded in the mortal world. I only found them not long ago. When I learned that they were being taken care of by you here, I specially came to thank you." We don't dare. Old Man Pan quickly said, "Our Pan family is indebted to the young masters and young ladies. We don't dare to say thank you again." Fengjiu smiled and didn't say anything else. She just glanced at Pan Ning and looked at Pan Hong. Then, her eyes stopped at his legs. "How told me that you have helped them a lot. Back then, when the first young master was ambushed, although he saved his life with a pill, he couldn't heal his legs. This time, I came to take a look at the first young master's legs." "Thank you, madam." Old Man Pan stood up and bowed emotionally. They chatted in the hall for a while, but the city outside was in an uproar. Even the emperor, who was in the palace, had heard the secret guard report that the immortal had come to the Pan family. He, who was in the middle of a meeting with his officials, immediately dismissed them. Among them was Pan Ning's father. "Minister Pan, please wait." The emperor shouted and stood up. Pan Ning's father was startled and hurriedly turned back. He bowed with both hands and asked, "Your Majesty, do you have any other orders?" He was wondering why the emperor said to discuss it another day in the middle of the meeting. But the emperor's intentions were unpredictable and he didn't think too much about it. He thought that it was late and that it would be better to go home early for dinner. "Ha, Minister Pan. Wait a moment, I'll go with you after changing into casual clothes," he said with a smile, looking at him with eyes full of smiles. He didn't even give him time to respond. After giving him some instructions, he hurried back to the palace to change his clothes. Father Pan was in a daze as he stood there in a daze. He felt strange in his heart. Why did His Majesty want to go to their home again? What did he want to do this time? Could it be that something happened at home? For a moment, he felt a little uneasy as he waited. Once he was anxious and uneasy, he felt that time was passing too slowly. When he finally saw His Majesty in casual clothes with a few guards behind him, he hurried forward and asked, "Why does Your Majesty want to go to this old subject's house? Is there something wrong?" Let's go. You'll know when you get there." The emperor didn't say much. He just smiled and strode out. Helpless, Father Pan could only quickly catch up. At this time, the Pan family was hurriedly preparing for the banquet. It was rare for the children to see each other, so they all went to the martial arts field to play. Fengjiu took advantage of this time to examine Pan Hong's legs. "It's not a big problem. We'll start the treatment tomorrow and he'll be able to stand in half a month," Fengjiu said and smiled as he looked at their surprised and shocked expressions. Chapter 46-49. "Yes, he will be able to stand in half a month." Fengjiu nodded. "Thank you, madam, thank you." The old master thanked her profusely. When Pan Hong heard that he would be able to stand in half a month, he could not hide his excitement. When the first madam heard this, she could not help but wipe away her tears and bow to Fengjiu gratefully. "Thank you, madam. Madam, please have a meal in the front yard." Pan Ning made an inviting gesture and said, "My father is in the palace and has not returned yet. When he returns, he will pay his respects to madam." "No problem," Fengjiu said, indicating that there was no need to trouble him. Then, he walked towards the front yard accompanied by Pan Ning. The moment Pan Ning's father stepped out of the palace, the coachman came forward to congratulate him, saying that an immortal had come to the Pan family. Someone had also come to the Pan family and asked him to quickly return home. While he was pleasantly surprised, he also understood why the emperor wanted to accompany him to the Pan family. He turned around and saw that the emperor had already boarded a low-key but luxurious carriage. Only then did he quickly enter the carriage and ask the coachman to quickly return home. As expected, along the way, the commoners who recognized the Pan family's carriage came forward to congratulate them, saying that their family had a great fortune and that an immortal had come to visit. On the way back, he saw that there were many people gathered in front of the door. He asked people to disperse the crowd and personally welcomed the emperor, who was dressed in casual clothes. After entering the house, he asked people to close the door. "Your Majesty, please come in." Although Pan Ning's father wanted to quickly go in and see what was going on, he could not leave the emperor by his side. He could only ask him to go in first. The emperor wanted to see the immortal. Now that he had entered the Pan family, his footsteps quickened. When he reached the front yard, he saw the servants coming back and forth to serve the dishes. He could not help but smile. "It seems that I have come at the right time." Pan Ning's father smiled, "Since your Majesty is here, we will naturally eat together. Perhaps we can even see the immortal." The two of them talked as they walked inside. The emperor, who was walking in front, also slowed down his pace. When he saw the dazzling beauty in red sitting in the middle of the banquet, his breathing could not help but stagnate. Even his footsteps came to a stop. His eyes burned as he looked at the soul-stirring beauty. Could it be that this beautiful woman was a fairy? This was a peerless beauty that should only exist in the heavens. Even the 3,000 beauties in his harem could not compare to this woman. In particular, the noble and elegant temperament that naturally emanated from her body was even more impressive. She was like a dazzling sun. Wherever she appeared, no one else could be seen. His heart thumped slightly, but his breathing slowed down a little, as if he was afraid of startling the immortal. However, his burning eyes followed her closely, watching her every move, every frown and every smile. The more he looked, the more he felt that she was moving. The more he looked, the more his heart itched. Fengjiu immediately sensed that burning gaze, as if he had seen his prey, but he did not pay attention to it. However, he did not expect that the gaze would become more and more unbridled, causing the smile on her face, who was originally talking to Pan Ning and the others, to fade. "Your Majesty, Your Majesty." Chapter 46-50. His voice became heavier and carried a hint of anxiousness, which caused the emperor, who was intoxicated by Fengjiu's beauty, to come back to his senses. Cough. He uncomfortably clenched his fist and pressed it against his lips as he coughed lightly. He glanced at Pan Fu, then looked at the beautiful woman in red, and said, "Minister Pan, this lady should be the immortal, right?" Pan Fu wiped his sweat, and said, "This subject has not seen her before, but since she appeared here, I think she should be." Pan Fu, Pan Hong, Pan Ning, and the others all noticed the emperor's arrival. They also noticed that the emperor looked at Fengjiu with the gaze of a man looking at a woman. If Fengjiu was an ordinary woman, then the emperor, as the ruler of a country, would naturally look at a woman with the gaze of a man. However, Fengjiu was not an ordinary woman. She was an immortal, a woman. Moreover, she was a female immortal who already had a husband and a child. For the emperor to look at her with such a gaze was a blatant offense. Seeing this, their hearts tightened, and they hurriedly stood up to mediate the situation. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Pan Hong and the others hurriedly stood up and bowed. I have come incognito, so there is no need for such formalities." The emperor smiled and waved his hand, his gaze still fixed on Fengjiu. He saw her sitting there, holding a wine cup in her hand and gently turning it. Her fair and slender fingers moved with the movement of the wine cup, giving off a seductive feeling. "Impudent." A reprimand came out of Ling Shuang's mouth, causing the emperor's mind to tremble. He recovered from his intoxicated state of staring at Fengzhou's fingers and swallowing saliva. He felt a little awkward and was unable to back down, and his face immediately turned green and white. A wave of pressure filled the air, and under this pressure, everyone felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on their chests. Even breathing was difficult. The one who felt the most uncomfortable was the emperor. He stood there, cold sweat seeping out of his forehead. The powerful pressure made him fearful, and he even had the urge to kneel down. However, Leng Xuan knew when to stop. She knew that if she made the emperor kneel in front of so many people in the Pan family, he would probably attack the Pan family out of shame and anger. Therefore, she only exerted pressure to make him uncomfortable, but did not directly force him to kneel. After a while, the emperor's clothes were drenched in cold sweat, and his legs were weak. At this time, Fengzhou said, "Okay, go and see if the children are here." Yes, Leng Xuan then retracted her pressure and turned to leave. Seeing this, Master Pan hurriedly bowed to Fengzhou and said a few words of praise before hurriedly helping the emperor out. "Madam, please excuse me for a moment," Pan Hong said, bowing to Fengzhou before pushing his wheelchair away. "Madam, please don't be offended. His Majesty has been in power for a long time, so it's inevitable that he loses his sense of propriety sometimes," Master Pan said. Fengzhou smiled and said, "It looks like your emperor is not a smart person. As the ruler of a country, it's not good for the people to be so short-sighted." The Pan family did not dare to respond to this. Pan Ming only helped Fengzhou pour wine and talked about other things. On the other side, the emperor, who was being helped away by Master Pan, felt his legs go weak. He wanted to stand, but he could not. It was as if all his strength had disappeared. Chapter 46-51. Father Pan looked at him, hesitating to speak. He knew that the emperor was up to no good when he came to their house. This time, he had offended an immortal. Not only would he be in trouble, but he also didn't know if the immortal would blame the Pan family. "Master, eldest young master is here," the attendant outside reported. Hearing this, Father Pan looked at the emperor and said, "Your Majesty. Let him in." The emperor said, sitting down weakly. Thus, Father Pan went to open the door personally. When he saw his eldest son pushing a wheelchair in, he helped push it in and only closed the door after he entered. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Pan Hong bowed from the wheelchair. "No need." The emperor waved his hand and looked at him, asking, "What are you here for? Do you want to invite me to the banquet?" "Your Majesty." Pan Hong looked at him with a serious expression and said, "Your Majesty, what I'm about to say may be disrespectful, but it's all for your own good. Please forgive me." Hearing this, the emperor's expression changed slightly, but he didn't say anything. He only said, "Then say it." "Yes." Pan Hong replied, then said, "I feel that Your Majesty's actions just now were inappropriate. That is an immortal, a person high up in the heavens. Even if Your Majesty is the ruler of a country, you can't offend an immortal like this. Your Majesty also knows about immortals' instincts. If they are angered, they can destroy our entire dynasty in an instant." Seeing that the emperor's face had changed greatly and seemed to be nervous, Pan Hongkai continued, "In the country under Your Majesty's control, having an immortal visit our dynasty is a great blessing that you can't even ask for. No matter which country's monarch receives the news, they will definitely express their goodwill to Your Majesty in order to befriend you. How can Your Majesty ruin such a good thing, such a great blessing because of your momentary confusion? Then according to your words, what should I do now?" He already knew the seriousness of the matter and the pros and cons. His head that had been blinded by the beauty also sobered up at this moment and hurriedly asked Pan Hong. After Pan Hong could no longer stand up, he resigned from his position and stayed at home. Since he was already a court official, he shouldn't have said such things. However, this matter didn't just concern the emperor, it also concerned the Pan family. Thus, he could only speak up boldly and tell him the pros and cons. Now that he saw that he was willing to listen, he relaxed slightly and said, "If your majesty listens to my words, you will personally apologize and then return to the palace." Apologize? The emperor was a little hesitant. As the ruler of a country, how could he swallow his pride and apologize? "If your majesty feels that it is inappropriate to go personally, you can return to the palace first and send someone to send some gifts as an apology. My father and I will definitely put in a good word for your majesty in front of the immortal and ask for her forgiveness," Pan Hong said again. Hearing this, the emperor hurriedly said, That's good. We'll do as you say. I'll return to the palace now and have someone send over a generous gift. You must put in a good word for me in front of the immortals. I really didn't mean to offend you." "Yes," Pan Hong replied. Seeing this, Pan Hong's father heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, he stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, I'll send you out." No need. You can accompany the immortal. I'll leave on my own." He waved his hand and took a deep breath before walking out. A few guards escorted him out. Chapter 46-52. Fortunately, the emperor still valued his empire and was not blinded by beauty. Otherwise, they really didn't know how to clean up this mess. "Let's go back to the banquet first," Father Pan said, gesturing for him to go forward with him. Pan Hong nodded his head and pushed the wheelchair forward. Father Pan saw this and didn't help him, because he was used to doing it himself. He only said, "Our Pan family is really lucky. I didn't expect Hao's mother to come here personally. Yes, I didn't expect them to come again either." In his opinion, the three children had given them treasures before they left and had done so much for the Pan family. Even if there was any kindness, it should have been repaid long ago. Moreover, the Pan family hadn't done anything for them. If there was anything, it would have been for the period of time when they lived in the Pan family's home when they were stranded here. And this time, the Pan family knew that the other party didn't hide their identity as immortals when they came to the imperial city. Now that they came to their house, they brought glory to the Pan family. After today, everyone would know that the Pan family had some relationship with immortals. Everyone would have to treat them differently. Even if they weren't important officials in the imperial court, no one would dare to look down on them. When they came to the front of the banquet, the other people, including the children, had also arrived. The two of them came to Fengjiu's side. Father Pan said apologetically, "Madam, I'm really sorry." Fengjiu raised his hand and interrupted him, saying, "Forget it, there's no need to talk about other things. This time, we won't stay here for too long. Our main goal is to treat eldest young master's legs. Both of you, please take a seat." Seeing this, the two of them responded and sat down at the banquet. Perhaps it was because Fengjiu and the others were immortals, or perhaps it was because of the natural pressure that emanated from them that they were a little restrained. On the other hand, the children relaxed a little during the banquet, especially Bo Qing. It was rare for him to see his friends again, so he was always in a state of excitement. The Pan family chatted with Fengjiu and the others as they drank and chatted. It was late into the night before they went back to the courtyard to rest. Although it was late at night, 17, who came back with Fengjiu and the others, did not go back to rest. Instead, she gathered with her former Shadow Guard brothers. 17, I didn't expect you to become an immortal. What a great fortune. Yes. Who would have thought that you, 17, would become an immortal one day? You really make us envious. 17, tell us about the immortal world. Is there anything we haven't seen? Did the immortals fly in the sky? 17, can you fly? Many shadow guards surrounded 17 and asked enviously. There were so many of them, but only 17 had walked out. Moreover, it was second young master who gave him to young master Hao and asked him to follow them. They did not expect that he would receive the immortal fate. Chapter 46-53. Ever since 17 left with the 3 children, some of them wondered if 17 was already dead. After all, 17 had to protect the 3 children, and the place they were going to was probably filled with unknown dangers. Who would have thought that 17 was still alive and even obtained the immortal fate? This made them envious. 17 looked at them and said, "The immortal world is the same as the mortal world. It can even be said that it's more dangerous. With my skills, I don't even have a chance to fight back in front of those immortals. Furthermore, immortals don't even need to lift a finger to kill people. Just a wave of pressure is enough to crush people. You don't know this, but those beasts all have spiritual intelligence and their fighting power is very shocking." That night, 17 told his former brothers about the immortal world. Some were beautiful, and some were cruel. While they were amazed and envious, they were also shocked. They didn't expect that the immortal world was the same as their mortal world. There was an inescapable cruelty. However, even though they knew that there was killing there, they still yearned for it. After all, stepping into the immortal world meant that they had twice the lifespan of a mortal. Furthermore, they could see so many things that they had never seen before. Even though they knew that it was cruel, they still regretted that they didn't have the immortal fate. The next morning, Fengjiu helped Pan Hong to inject spiritual power into the silver needles to activate the blood vessels and meridians in his legs. He also asked someone to prepare a medicinal bath for him. Not long after he returned to the courtyard, he saw Pan Hong's father bringing over the gifts that the emperor had ordered people to send over. "Madam, these are the gifts sent by our emperor." Pan Hong ordered people to send the gifts to Fengjiu's courtyard and placed them on the table. He said, "These can't be compared to the treasures that Madam has seen before, but it's still a small token of His Majesty's appreciation." Fengjiu smiled and said, "I'll give it to you. These things are useless to us." Seeing this, Pan Ning ordered people to send the gifts to the main courtyard. This was because they also knew that these things that they regarded as treasures were useless to immortals. Fengjiu slowly walked to the courtyard and sat down, watching the children play outside the courtyard. Father Pan and Pan Ning also sat down at the table under Fengjiu's signal. Pan Hong's legs only need 3 days to be pierced with silver needles. The rest of the time, he will slowly recover by soaking in the medicinal bath. When his legs are able to stand up and walk, let him walk more in the early morning every day. He will recover faster. Hearing Fengjiu's words, Father Pan and Pan Ning quickly responded, "Okay, we'll remember it." "Father. Grandpa, I want to cultivate like Sister Yu and Mu Chen." Fu Qing ran over and held Pan Ning's hand. "I want to be as powerful as them. Father, not only can I not beat Mu Chen, but I also can't beat you." He admitted that he was no match for Mu Chen, but why couldn't he even touch Yu's clothes? "Don't mess around." Pan Ning scolded. "I'm not messing around, I want to cultivate." He refused to admit defeat and was not afraid of his father's scolding. Instead, he went to his grandfather's side and tugged at his sleeve. Grandpa, I want to cultivate. I want to become very powerful." "Children shouldn't mess around," Father Pan said and patted his hand to comfort him. Chapter 46-54. Father Pan and Pan Ning's hearts skipped a beat when they heard this. They looked at Fengjiu in unison. Fengjiu looked at the silly little boy in front of her and thought of her brother's son. She chuckled and asked, "Do you know what cultivation is?" "You can be very powerful if you cultivate." "If I cultivate, I might be able to beat Mu Chen." He looked at Mu Chen and Mu Yu who were walking towards his mother. He wanted to beat Mu Chen because he was a boy and older than Mu Chen, but he couldn't beat him. Fengjiu's smile widened at the child's childish words. She reached out and placed her hand on the top of the little boy's head. She raised her eyebrows in surprise and smiled. "I didn't expect you to be a martial artist." Pan Ning couldn't help but ask, "Madam, my son. He has the body of a mystic cultivator, so he can cultivate. His muscles and bones are not bad, Fengjiu said with a smile. Then. Father Pan suddenly became nervous. He was so excited that he couldn't speak. Aunt Feng, then can I cultivate with Sister Yu, and Mu Chen? Bo Qing looked at her with shining eyes. His little face was full of excitement. Feng Jiu smiled. What they cultivate is not suitable for you. However, if you really want to step into the cultivation world, I can find you a good place to go. As she spoke, she looked at Pan Ning and Pan Fu. The two didn't need her to say more. Pan Ning immediately said, if Madam can send my son to cultivate, the Pan family will be very grateful. He quickly stood up and bowed. Yes, Father Pan said. Seeing this, Feng Jiu looked at them and said, do you know that the cultivation world is also cruel? You won't be able to live peacefully after entering the cultivation world. If he chooses to stay in the mortal world, I think that the descendants of the Pan family will be able to live a carefree life and will even have a high position. However, if he goes to the cultivation world, he can only start from the lowest point. Perhaps he will be killed before he can grow up and die in a battle with others. Then, do you still want him to set foot in the cultivation world? Father Pan and Pan Ning were stunned. Perhaps they knew this would happen, but when the cruelty of the situation was placed in front of them, they didn't know how to choose. If they allowed Bo Qing to leave with them to cultivate, and if he could grow up, the Pan family would also become a family with immortals in the future. Perhaps many years later, the descendants of the Pan family would also be able to step into the cultivation world because of Bo Qing. However, Bo Qing was still so young. How could they make such a decision for him? Bo Qing looked at his grandfather, then at his father. Finally, he said resolutely, I want to go. I want to become very powerful. Aunt Feng, can I go with you? Bowen walked up and asked Fengjiu. Fengjiu looked at him and reached out a hand. Then, he shook his head. You don't have a spiritual root, and you're not a mystical cultivator. You can't become an immortal. You can only be a mortal. In the mortal world, there were very few children with spiritual roots. It was normal that they couldn't detect his spiritual roots and mystical qi constitution. Chapter 46-55. Mother, let's bring big brother Fu Qing with us. We can cultivate together and grow up together in the future. Yu said with a smile. She looked at Fu Qing and Pan Ning as if she had thought of something. In the end, she asked with some distress, Big brother Fu Qing, are you willing to leave your father and mother? If you leave with us, what will you do if you can't see them in the future? Hearing this, Fu Qing was startled and seemed to be in a daze. He looked at his father and muttered, I can't see them in the future. Then when I grow up, can't I come back? Fengjiu smiled and said, of course, when you are strong enough, you can naturally come back. Fu Qing turned to look at his father, his little face full of seriousness, and said, Father, when I grow up and become very powerful, I will come back to see you. Hearing this, Pan Ning had an indescribable feeling in his heart. In the end, he could only sigh and solemnly bowed to Fengjiu, saying, Madam, please bring Fu Qing with you. Whether it is a blessing or a curse, it will depend on his own good fortune. When we leave, let him come with us. Don't worry, I will find a good place for him to go. Fengjiu smiled and didn't say anything else. What she said before was just to test them. Since she could take this little boy away, she would naturally find a good place for him so that he could learn things and grow up safely. Therefore, when this decision was made, the Pan family also discussed this matter. However, this matter was not known to anyone else, only the masters of the Pan family knew. According to Fengjiu's suggestion, not long after they left, let the Pan family release the news that Fu Qing had passed away due to a sudden illness. She wanted them to act as if Fu Qing didn't exist here. Only this would be a good thing for the Pan family. In the next few days, Fengjiu said goodbye to the Pan family when Pan Hong's legs could slightly stand. When they came, they caused quite a commotion, but when they left quietly. Fu Qing's mother, Pan Ning's wife, watched her son leave with them and cried until she fainted in Pan Ning's arms. She didn't know if she would have the chance to see her child again. On the spaceship, Fu Qing sat at the side wiping his tears and sniffling. Looking at the place getting farther and farther away, he secretly decided that in the future, he would definitely come back. He would definitely come back to see his father and mother, as well as his great-grandfather and grandfather. Brother Fu Qing, here is a fruit to eat, don't cry. You, gave him a spirit fruit. A man don't cry shameful. Mu Chen's expression was still cool, but he seemed to know how it felt to leave one's parents. Hence, although his delicate little face was tense, he softened his tone and said, "My mother will find you a good master. When that time comes, you just have to practice hard. When you grow up and become stronger, you can come back whenever you want. What's there to cry about? I just want to cry. Don't worry about me. I just want to cry, not bleed." He wiped his tears and turned his back to Mu Chen. Hao walked over and didn't say anything. He just sat down and quietly looked at the sky outside. Chapter 46-56. She looked at the masked man sitting cross-legged in the corner of the bow. She saw that his aura was calm and he was sitting there with his eyes closed. There was a small barrier around him that protected his body. During this period of time, she also realized that he would find a place to sit cross-legged sometimes. It didn't look like he was cultivating, but more like, his soul was out of his body. Thinking back to what he had said earlier, that this was not his body, and that he had only borrowed this body to come here, he was even more certain of his guess that his soul had left his body. Half a year. After half a year, the children would leave with him. Thinking of this, she took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. After a pause, she sat up and looked at her 3 children. "You guys, come here." She waved at the 3 of them. When the 3 children saw her, they went to their mother's side. Yu threw herself into her arms, while Mu Chen and Hao stood at the side. Mother, what kind of master are you looking for Brother Wuxia?" Yu looked up and asked in her arms. Fengjiu stroked her little head and smiled gently. "He's a mystic, so naturally, I'll find him a mystic to be his master. Don't worry. I'll find him a good one." "Mother, uncle is a mystic," Mu Chen said. Hearing this, Fengjiu raised an eyebrow and looked at him. "You mean to send him to your uncle and let him accept him as a disciple?" Actually, she wanted to send Pan Wuxia to a sect. As long as she said the word, no matter which sect he was sent to, he would be well groomed. "Isn't that good?" Mu Chen asked with doubt in his eyes. Fengjiu shook her head and said, "It's not that it's not good, but it's not very suitable. Because he's your uncle, I can't make the decision to accept a disciple for him. So, I'm going to send Wuxia to a sect and find him a good master. As long as his talent is outstanding and he's willing to work hard, he will definitely be successful in the future." Yes. When Mu Chen heard her say this, he thought that his mother had her own considerations and that it must be for Wuxia's good, so he didn't say much. "Mother, where are we going now?" Hao asked. "Let's go to Xianyuan Empire, to your grandfather's place." Fengjiu said, "Ever since we found you, we only informed your grandfather. We haven't brought you to see him yet. This time, we're going to stay there for a while." If she sent the children away, he would have fewer chances to see them in the future. This time, she was bringing them back so that they could accompany him. Moreover, she had to find a chance to talk to him about Mose. Putting away her thoughts, she looked at the 3 children and said, "The medicinal pills that mother gave you have pretty much been used up, right? What did he lack? Mother will find time to refine some more for you." Mother, we don't have any more medicinal pills to treat our internal injuries." Even Big Brother couldn't bear to use them last time. Let us use it. You hastily said. Mother, we're running out of medicine for external injuries, Mu Chen added. Hearing this, Fengjiu nodded, and, Mother understands. Then Mother will help you refine some more and distribute them to you. In the future, when they leave her side, it seems that she will have to refine more pills for them. Chapter 46-57. Fengjiu said, then took out a book which recorded all kinds of elixirs, and handed it over to you, she said, inside this book, not only the effect of all kinds of elixirs, but also the effect of each elixir is clearly drawn on it. Mother has made some notes and some experience, you keep it, later when you have time, you can read it. Mother, you already has one. The little girl looked at her mother in surprise. She also had one of her mother's medicine books in her space. Fengjiu smiled and said, that book is different from this one. Keep it. These books are already useless to Mother. Don't you want to learn medicine, poison, and so on? Then read more books and study more. Only by doing experiments yourself will you clearly know the difference between the effects of each elixir. The little girl nodded her head as if she understood. Then she took the book and sweetly smiled. Thank you, Mother. Fengjiu patted her head and took out some things from her space for Hao, and Mu Chen. She told them to keep these things, perhaps they would be useful in the future. After that, she got up and entered the cabin. She told Ling Shuang to stand guard outside while she entered her space to refine elixirs for the children. After a few days, the airship slowly landed outside the palace gate of Shenyuan Empire. When the airship landed, the people guarding the palace gate quickly went in to report. When Emperor Shenyuan knew that Fengjiu and the others had come, his face couldn't help but overflow with a happy smile. He didn't wait for them to enter the palace. Instead, he rushed out and arrived in front of the palace gate. Grandpa. You, excitedly rushed towards Emperor Shenyuan with her short legs. Ha 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 ha, Grandpa's good granddaughter has come. Quickly let Grandpa see how much taller you have grown. Emperor Shenyuan picked up the child and pinched her chubby little hands. Then he patted her little head. The more he looked at her, the happier he was. Good, good, good. You didn't lose weight. It's good to be chubby. It's good to be chubby, he said with gratification. Seeing that the children had returned safely, his heart was finally at ease. Grandpa. Grandpa. Hao and Mu Chen stepped forward and respectfully bowed to him. We are back. Good, good, good. It's good that you're back. He nodded as he spoke. Tears welled up in his eyes. He looked at Fengjiu and said, it's good that you found the children. I'm relieved that they're back. Thank you for your hard work this time. As he spoke, he glanced at the people beside Fengjiu and was a little surprised. Other than a few familiar people, there was also a masked man, a guard in black, and a little boy. Du Fan, Ling Hua, and Ling Shuang were all there, but Moze was nowhere to be seen. Where's Moze? Why didn't he come back with you? He asked, feeling a little strange. Father. Fengjiu was the first to call out. He walked forward and said, let's talk inside. Hearing this, the Emperor of Shenyuan Kingdom was stunned for a moment. Then, he burst out laughing, that's right, that's right. Look at me. You guys came all the way here and you're asking me questions here. Come, come, come. Quick. Follow me in. Are you guys hungry? I'll get the imperial kitchen to prepare some food for you. Then, have a good rest. The group entered the palace. Emperor Xuanyuan's face was full of smiles when they arrived. He got the imperial kitchen to prepare some food and the servants to tidy up the place for them to stay. Chapter 46-58. Have a seat. The Emperor of Shenyuan gestured. He looked at her and asked, did something happen to Moze? Actually, when he saw that his son did not return today and Fengjiu did not answer his question, he had a vague guess in his heart. However, he did not know what could have happened with his son's abilities. Fengjiu nodded and sat down on the chair. Father, before we found the children, something happened to Mose. It happened because of his advancement. Breakthrough. The emperor of the Xianyuan kingdom's heart sank. Something like a breakthrough was no small matter. It's like this. Fengjiu told him everything that happened that day. In the end, he said, my brother went back to the land that Mose controlled to investigate. On the day that something happened to Mose, the land shook greatly. However, his spiritual energy did not completely disappear. Hence, we guessed that he is not dead. We just don't know where he is now. Hearing this, the emperor of Xianyuan sighed softly and said, we heard the sound of thunder from here. However, it was too far away. We did not receive any news and did not know that something had happened to him. He looked at Fengjiu and said with a heavy heart, who can say for sure that he is still alive under such heavenly lightning? Even if his spiritual energy did not completely disappear, it could be a matter of time. The heavenly lightning was so powerful that even he could not withstand it. No, I don't believe that he is dead. I don't believe that he no longer exists in this world. I would rather believe that he is recuperating somewhere. Fengjiu said firmly. He is my son. Why would I not want him to be alive? I'm just worried that if you have too much hope, you'll suffer a bigger blow in the future. It's good to have hope in your heart, but you have to be mentally prepared. You can't wait until the time comes when the hope in your heart is shattered and your beliefs can't hold on. Fengjiu remained silent and did not say a word. She knew that he said this for her own good and to prepare her mentally. However, she did not want to believe and would not believe that Mose did not exist in this world. He must still be alive. The emperor of Xianyuan did not continue on this topic. Instead, he asked, the children don't know yet, right? Are you not going to tell them? I haven't thought of how to tell them. Fengjiu said worriedly, although they are young, they are already sensible. If I tell them, I am worried that their small hearts will not be able to take it. Hearing this, he sighed softly and said, the children are stronger than you think. Don't worry. Tell them. They are already sensible and they should know. Father, actually, I have something else to tell you this time. Fengjiu looked at him. Tell me. I am listening. What is it? He asked. Fengjiu stretched out his hand and set up a soundproof barrier. Then, he said, Mose is in trouble because someone from the immortal realm is pressuring us and wants to kill us. So, I am preparing to send the 3 children away. The masked man who came with us today is a powerful person from the immortal realm. He is. She carefully explained the seriousness of the matter to him and the decision she made. She hoped that he would understand. Chapter 46-59. I'm not sure about the situation up there, but for now, that's right. She nodded. Since you're not sure about the situation up there, how can you be sure that the children will grow up safely after you send them up there? And how can you be sure that the person who doesn't even want to tell us his name will really protect them? The emperor of Xianyuan kingdom asked, unable to loosen his frown. After hearing Fengjiu's words, he became even more worried. I've been observing him all this time, and I feel that this person is trustworthy. Besides that, there's another matter regarding you, Inside the palace, outsiders were unable to know what the 2 of them were talking about inside the barrier. At this time, because it was evening, the children were playing around in the palace. Especially Bo Qing, who had never seen such a beautiful palace, was very excited. This place is so beautiful. Mu Chen, your grandfather is actually the emperor. That's really amazing. Bo Qing exclaimed. He didn't expect them to have such an identity. Mu Chen glanced at him and said, of course my grandfather is amazing, but my parents are even more amazing. They are the masters of heaven and earth, much more powerful than the emperor. In the future, I will also be as powerful as my parents, so you can't beat me. I don't believe it. I will also be very powerful in the future. I will definitely beat you. Bo Qing said, unconvinced. Brother Bo Qing, I'll take you to see the spirit beasts in the palace. Yu stepped forward and pulled his hand, saying, my grandfather also has a red-crowned crane that can fly. I'll take you to see it. Really? Okay. Let's go see it. When Bo Qing heard this, his eyes lit up and his little face was full of excitement. In an instant, he forgot about what had just happened. It could be said that other than secretly crying when he first left home for a day or two, after a long time, he no longer cried when he thought of his parents and family. More often than not, he was attracted by new and interesting things. This was because during this time, he had seen many new and strange things and things. In the future, he might see more and know more. When Leng Hua and Leng Shuang saw them walking towards the spirit beast garden, they followed behind them unhurriedly. Although it was said that it was very safe and there wouldn't be any more people like the demon master appearing, they would still follow behind to protect him, just in case. After staying in the palace for 2 days, Fengjiu asked Du Fan to send Bo Qing to the sect that she, Yi Jing, and her brother had cultivated in before. Because there, other than spirit cultivators, there were also mystic cultivators. After thinking about it, she felt that sending Bo Qing there was the most suitable. On this day, Fengjiu watched the children say their goodbyes and felt a little uncomfortable. Therefore, after this farewell, it would be difficult for them to see each other again in the future. When you go there, you have to cultivate well. Don't just fight with others. Remember to run when you can't beat others. Mu Chen looked at the red-eyed Bo Qing and said stiffly. Sob, I know. I'll miss you guys. When I become more powerful, I'll come and fight with you. At that time, I'll definitely be able to defeat you. He cried as he wiped his tears. The corner of Mu Chen's mouth twitched. Originally, he was still a little reluctant, but suddenly, it became subtle. He could only say with a straight face, I will wait. Chapter 46-60. Holding the dagger, Fu Qing wiped his tears and said, yes, I know. I will take good care of myself. You guys should take good care of yourselves too. Don't get lost again. Alright, it's getting late. Let's go. Du Fan stepped forward and patted Fu Qing's shoulder. He looked at Fengjiu and said, Master, I'll send him to the sect first. I'll come back when I'm done with the matter. Okay, go. Fengjiu gestured. He watched him take out the flying device and leave with 17 and Fu Qing. Only then did he look at the 3 children. Let's go back to the palace. During this period of time, accompany your grandfather well. Fengjiu stroked the children's heads and said. The 3 followed her inside. Yu asked, Mother, will we be able to see Fu Qing again in the future? Fengjiu held her hand and walked forward. She looked ahead and said, there's no such thing as an eternal banquet in the world. We meet when we are fated, and when we are not, we part ways. Let nature take its course. There's no need to be too deliberate. The 3 children listened and fell silent. After a while, they nodded. Yes, we understand. Mother, where's father? Mu Chen asked and looked up at her. You haven't told us where father went. Mother, did something happen to father? Fengjiu stopped in her tracks and her expression flickered. She lowered her head and looked at her son beside her. She revealed a gentle smile and reached out to stroke his hair. Hao and Yu were also looking at her, as if waiting for her answer. Thus, she looked at the palace fence not far away and said, let's go there. I'll tell you guys. Thus, the 3 children followed her to the fence. When they saw her sitting on the fence, the 3 children imitated her and sat beside her. The three children's 6 eyes fell on her at the same time, waiting for her to tell them. A while ago, the weakening of the blood curse on your bodies was indeed related to your father. Something happened to him when he was advancing and we don't know where he is now. However, you don't have to worry, he will definitely be fine. Perhaps he is just recuperating somewhere and will come back to find us when his body recovers. Fengjiu only gave them a brief summary of the situation. Only she knew how dangerous it was, but she didn't want the children to think too much or worry too much, so she only gave them a brief summary. Even mother doesn't know where father is? Yu wrinkled her small face, then blinking her pair of worried eyes, she looked at her mother. Fengjiu smiled and rubbed her little head. Your father is very powerful, you don't have to worry about him. However, mother still has something to tell you three. Mother, what's the matter? How? Asked. After a period of time, mother will send you to other places to learn and cultivate. Therefore, during this period of time, you must remember what mother taught you. Perhaps in the future, you will be able to use it. Mother wants to send us away. Where are we going? We don't want to learn and cultivate with mother. Yu hurriedly said, her pair of small hands tightly clutching her mother's sleeve. Mother, I also don't want to leave mother. I want to stay by mother's side. Mu Chen also said. Chapter 46-61. Hearing the children's words, Fengjiu felt a bit sour in her heart. She looked at them and revealed a faint smile. You have to listen to mother obediently. No matter what mother does, it's for your own good. When the three children heard this, they looked at each other and fell silent. All right, I'll send you to grandfather's place. You have to accompany grandfather. Mother will go back and refine pills for you. She led the children to the main hall. After sending them to the main hall, she had Leng Hua look after them. Only then did she enter her room and flash into the space. After about a month, Du Fan returned. After arriving at the palace, he first went to find Fengjiu to report the matter of sending Bo Qin to the sect, as well as the matter of sending 17 to the Phoenix Guards for training. As for Luo Yu, Qin Xian and the others, because they were told to take care of their various strongholds, they didn't come with them. Master, Luo Yu and the others have taken care of everything else. Right now, there aren't any major events happening in the various strongholds. During this period of time, Master can rest assured that everything will be normal. Du Fan helped Fengjiu pour a cup of tea and said. Fengjiu had just finished refining a cauldron of pills. Her clothes were stained with the smell of medicine and she looked a bit tired. She took a sip of tea and said, with them looking after me, of course I can rest assured. We've been living here for almost a month. For the remaining time, I plan to take the three children out for a walk and see the outside world. You should go back and rest for today. Pack up and prepare to leave tomorrow. Yes. Du Fan replied and bowed before leaving. Master, the water for a bath has been prepared. Do you want to take a bath first? Leng Hua walked up and asked. N. Fengjiu replied. He stood up and rubbed his shoulders, asking, where did the children go to play? They're training with Leng Hua in the martial arts field. Leng Hua said. Hearing this, Fengjiu nodded and went in to take a bath, preparing to wash away his fatigue and relax. And at the training field, Mu Chen and Mu Yu were having a contest. They were trying to fight bare-handed, and there were several times when Mu Chen easily threw Yu to the ground. However, the ground in the martial arts field was not hard. Instead, it was made of fine sand. There was no pain when one fell on it. However, the little girl had been thrown on the sand time and time again. Her temper was starting to get a little worse. I don't believe that big brother won't fall. Yu said. Looking at her brother who was firmly standing in horse stance, she rolled her eyes and revealed a crafty smile. The next moment, she directly ran forward. She didn't wave her small fists to attack, rather used her small body to forcefully collide with him. Mu Chen saw her lowering her head like a calf and couldn't help but be startled. He quickly reached out to block her small head. Who knew that the little girl would use all her strength, and this collision really knocked him to the ground. Ha 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 ha, Big Brother also fell. Laughed happily. She didn't get up and just lay on Mu Chen's body, shouting and dancing. Not far away, Hao, who was training with Lang Hua, heard the laughter and looked back. He saw his brother and sister playing on the sand. Seeing this, his cold face couldn't help but reveal a smile. However, it was also at this time that his face suddenly changed. It was because the fine sand on the sand suddenly rolled up and formed a human sandman that rushed towards Mu Chen and Mu Yu. Chapter 46-62. Almost at the same time, Lang Hua's expression changed, and he immediately rushed toward Mu Chen and Mu Yu. However, the sandman formed by the fine sand pounced on the two children at an extremely fast speed. Dodge! Lang Hua shouted. At the same time, he condensed a wind blade in his hand. Whoosh! Bang! With a swoosh, a wind blade cut through the air, bringing with it a swift and fierce airflow. Immediately after, the wind palm accurately hit the human figure condensed from fine sand. With a bang, the condensed fine sand instantly scattered all over the ground, and a yellow talisman also floated to the ground. Seeing this, Lang Hua heaved a sigh of relief. Even Hao, who was running over, also let out a sigh of relief. The two little guys on the ground also recovered from their shock at this time. They quickly stood up and patted the fine sand off their bodies. But at this moment, the talisman on the ground suddenly exploded with a bang, scattering into pieces. The moment it exploded, the fine sand on the training field rolled up, and a sand wall rose up along with the aura that came out of nowhere, enclosing them inside. Oh no! Lang Hua had just heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the sudden change. He immediately took out an item from his space and crushed it. At the same time, he rushed toward the two little ones, shouting, Hao, come here. Hao had the strength of a golden core cultivator, and his ability to adapt was not bad. Therefore, Lang Hua only thought of Mu Chen and Mu Yu. After all, the two of them had limited combat power. If they really encountered danger, they would not be able to protect themselves. Whoosh! Whoosh whoosh! The wind and sand swirled, and the fine sand on the ground was rolled up to form a sand wall to encircle them in the middle. In the middle, some fine sand quickly condensed into human figures and attacked Mu Chen and Mu Yu. The two little guys had already recovered from their shock. Seeing the human-shaped killers formed by the fine sand, Mu Chen immediately pulled his sister and ran toward Lang Hua. Sister, hurry! The guards quickly went to report the shocking change. Feng Jiu, who was bathing, was lying in the water with her eyes closed. Suddenly, she seemed to have sensed something. She immediately raised her chi and splashed the water. At the same time, she quickly put on her inner clothes and put on her outer clothes. She didn't even bother to tie the belt of her outer clothes and rushed outside. Leng Shuang, who was guarding outside, did not know what was going on. But when she saw her master rushing outside while fastening his belt, she knew that it was urgent. She immediately followed after him. The masked man in the courtyard next door also seemed to sense something strange. Under the mask, his brows slightly furrowed, and his originally closed eyes suddenly opened. He rushed outside. The emperor of the Xianyuan kingdom rushed over after hearing the report from his guard. However, when he arrived at the training grounds, he saw that the training grounds had already been sealed off. The sand that was originally laid on the ground had formed 4 sand walls that surrounded the entire training grounds. He couldn't see what was going on inside, but he could feel a very powerful aura surging within. How? Chen, you, The emperor of Xianyuan shouted, but he could not hear the sound coming from inside. He could only hear the rustling of the wind and sand. Thus, he gathered his spiritual aura and was about to rush in to take a look when a hand landed on his shoulder. Before he could see who it was, he heard Fengjiu's voice. Chapter 46-63. As the emperor of the Shenyuan kingdom was pushed back, he only saw a red figure rushing forward. In the blink of an eye, the figure entered the sand wall. Seeing that it was Fengjiu, the emperor of the Shenyuan kingdom did not enter. Instead, he took a step back to watch and wait. At this moment, the masked man also arrived. However, he did not enter. Instead, he stood beside the emperor of the Shenyuan kingdom and quietly watched the scene in front of him with a thoughtful look in his eyes. In the middle of the training field, within the sand wall, Leng Hua was destroying the human-shaped sand. However, these human-shaped sand were not alive. After being hit, they scattered on the ground and became a pile of loose sand. However, in the next moment, these loose sand gathered together to form a human-shaped figure and attacked them again. This process repeated over and over again. Even though his strength was not weak, he was unable to block the human-shaped sand while protecting the two children at the same time. Seeing that 4 or 5 human-shaped sand were surrounding the two children, Leng Hua and Hao immediately shouted, "Quickly, get out of the way. Run!" The two of them struck out with their palms, intending to destroy the human-shaped sand. However, they did not expect that after the human-shaped sand surrounded the two children, they actually scattered into a pile of loose sand and fell to the ground. Then, they quickly piled up and buried the two children. Ah! The wind and sand swirled and covered the two children as if it wanted to bury them alive. Yu, who had never encountered such a situation, cried out in alarm. She instinctively hugged her head and squatted down. Seeing this, Mu Chen hurriedly used his small body to shield his sister. Just when they thought that they would definitely be buried alive, they heard a familiar and reassuring voice. "Draw a circle on the ground. Break." The moment Fengjiu's voice sounded, the three children fiercely looked in the direction of the voice. Not far away, their mother's red dress fluttered in the wind. Her beautiful face was filled with a cold voice. They saw her forming a strange seal with her hands and pinching a talisman between her fingers. As the seal fell, the talisman was also burned out by the flames that rose from her fingertips. As soon as she said the word "break," the ground that was as calm as the surface of a lake was smashed by a stone, and a powerful aura rippled out. In that instant, the surrounding wind and sand also fell, and the fine sand that had condensed into a human shape also fell to the ground. Faintly, there seemed to be some fragments of talismans among the fine sand. "Mother! Mother! Mother!" The three children cheered happily and quickly ran toward her. The moment they saw her, the three of them forgot the fright just now and only joy and peace. Fengjiu glanced around and saw that the surrounding sandstorm had calmed down. She then looked at the three children and asked, "Mother's death. Are you injured?" "Mother, we are not injured." "But mother, where did that come from? Why did the sand turn into a human?" Hao asked. "Talismans." The masked man slowly walked forward and glanced at the people standing in the martial arts field. Then, his gaze fell on Fengjiu, who was practicing martial arts. The masked man looked at Fengjiu and said in a deep voice, "They have already begun to attack you. You don't have much time left." Chapter 46-64. She looked at the talismans scattered on the sand and waved her hand. A flame swept across them and burned all the talisman fragments. "What's going on? Who used the talismans against you?" the emperor of the Shenyuan kingdom asked. He secretly heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the children were fine. "Father, don't worry. It's fine now. I'll send the children back to rest first. I'll look for you in a while," Fengjiu said. The emperor of the Shenyuan kingdom nodded when he heard that. "All right, go ahead. He watched as they walked towards the side hall where they were resting. He sighed softly and shook his head. He then walked back with his hands behind his back. Fengjiu sent the 3 children back to their rooms and asked them to bathe first. She then turned to Leng Hua and asked, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Leng Hua said. He then said apologetically, "I just didn't protect the 3 little masters well." "You've already done a good job. Watch over them. Pack up while you're at it. We're leaving tomorrow," Fengjiu instructed. She then asked Leng Hua to stay as well. When she saw the masked man sitting in the courtyard, she said, "I'm going to say goodbye to father." With a lot on her mind, Fengjiu went to the main hall. Father Xianyuan was already waiting there. When he saw her enter, he gestured to her and said, "Have a seat." Fengjiu sat down and said, "Father, I'm preparing to leave with the children tomorrow." The emperor of the Xianyuan kingdom hesitated when he heard that. He asked, "You're leaving? Is it because of what happened today?" "I was going to leave anyway. I wanted to take the children out to see the world. I didn't expect something like this to happen today. So I'm leaving tomorrow." She was going to leave tomorrow. Now that something like this had happened, she couldn't stay here any longer. She was afraid that she would bring trouble to him and the empire. "Then, where are you going? Do you have a target?" he asked. Thinking that his 3 grandsons were about to leave, he felt reluctant to part with them. Fengjiu paused for a moment, then said, "We still need to make a trip to the heavens. As for the other matters, it hasn't been decided yet. Half a year's time is almost up. Perhaps I will let the children go with their master in advance." Sigh. "I got it, you guys can go now. Take good care of yourselves and take care of yourselves. Nothing is more important than safety. No matter where you go, if you have the chance in the future, just bring the children back to see me. If you can't come back, just remember to send me a message to let me know that you are all safe." He sighed softly, and there was an unconcealable loneliness in his words. Fengjiu's lips moved, but he didn't know what to say. In the end, he just nodded. "I will." She took out some pills from her space and said, "Father, keep these pills with you just in case. If you encounter any problems in the future that you can't solve, you can send a message to my brother and ask him to come and help." He didn't refuse and took the pills. He replied, "Okay, I got it." Fengjiu stood up and looked at him deeply. "Father, parting is the saddest thing. You don't have to send us off tomorrow morning." Hearing that, he felt bitter. He looked at her and said, "Okay, take care of yourselves. Don't worry too much about this place. We are all fine here. Just take care of yourselves." Chapter 46-65. The next morning, Fengjiu and the rest boarded the spaceship and left. The emperor of the Xianyuan kingdom didn't send them off. Instead, he stood at a high vantage point and watched as their spaceship slowly ascended into the sky and disappeared into the clouds. Only then did the emperor of the Xianyuan kingdom retract his gaze and walk back slowly. At the bow of the spaceship, Fengjiu set up a soundproof enchantment. He looked at the masked man and said, "Didn't you say that they couldn't come down? Then how did they use talismans to create assassins?" The masked man leaned on one side. Compared to Fengjiu, his expression was more relaxed. He glanced at her and then looked at the clouds outside the spaceship. He said, "They can't come down, but that doesn't mean they can't do anything. Furthermore, they dealt with Xianyuan Mo's. Naturally, they won't leave you alive. It's only a matter of time before they make a move. Furthermore, since they've already made a move, it's impossible for them to stop." He paused and then said casually, "It seems like the rest of the journey won't be too boring." Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed. He said, "Then shouldn't you tell me about what happened up there?" "What should I tell you?" "Tell you that you're still an ant to the people up there who can kill you anytime with your current strength?" Or that the people up there want to kill you, and you'll have a slim chance of survival in the coming days? He glanced at Fengjiu and swirled the wine glass in his hand. He smiled faintly and said, I heard that you're destined to break through the 8 extremes of the heavenly Tao and become the master of the world. Perhaps this is a prophecy made by some of the people down there who are knowledgeable about the past and present. However, in the eyes of the people up there, those who are destined to have such a destiny are people who will be plagued with misfortune. They will have to go through all kinds of dangers and may even die at any time. Even if you're lucky enough to grow up, they will have many opportunities to kill you before you can stand shoulder to shoulder with them. Fengjiu pursed his lips and frowned. He said calmly, I don't want to know that. I just want to know how I can find my enemies. Also, is it only by ascending that I can see those powerful beings that you speak of? What kind of place is the 9 heavens immortal realm you mentioned? Hearing this, he smiled and shook his head. I can't say that because it's very likely that you won't be able to ascend in this lifetime. You have to know that in order for you to ascend, you have to go through 81 heavenly thunders to become an immortal. Since the Almighty above is trying to kill you, how could they let you go through 81 heavenly thunders? He smiled and said, let's talk about these things when you have the chance to ascend and become an immortal. As soon as he finished speaking, he downed the wine in his cup in one gulp and then collapsed onto the deck of the boat. He held his head with one hand and closed his eyes as he rested on his side. Obviously, he didn't want to talk to Fengjiu anymore. Fengjiu glanced at him and pursed his lips. He didn't say anything else and just waved his hand to remove the soundproof barrier. He stood up and walked around. She came to the front of the ship's bow and watched the ship glide through the clouds. She watched as the wind and clouds brushed past the ship's hull. She looked at the endless horizon in front of her and could not help but turn back to look at the 3 children. She made up her mind. Chapter 46-66. 2 days later, the airship was slowly flying in the sky. The people on the ship were either cultivating or resting. Everything looked so peaceful. However, in this seemingly peaceful sky, the weather suddenly darkened. At first, the wind whistled, causing the ship to sway a little. Then, a drizzle fell from the sky like needles. Why is it suddenly raining? Du Fan opened his eyes and looked at the sudden change in the sky. Seeing the drizzle fall like needles, he couldn't help but stand up in surprise. There was a barrier formed by spiritual power around the ship. Regardless of whether it was wind or rain, it couldn't blow in. Therefore, he stood at the bow of the ship and looked at the sudden change in the sky, observing for any abnormalities. What's wrong? Is something wrong? Lang Hua walked over and asked. He also looked at the sky that was raining. Seeing that the sky was dark, he asked, should we find a place to stop first? Didn't Master enter the space to refine pills? He probably won't be able to come out now. Du Fan said, still looking at the sky. He felt that the atmosphere in the sky was somewhat oppressive. Master entered the space and can't come out. Then, we'll control the airship to land. It's good to stop below. You see, the wind is getting stronger and stronger, and it's raining. The airship will be unstable during flight. Lang Hua said, thinking that it was necessary to find a place to stop below. Hearing this, Du Fan nodded. That's good. Let me see what's below. As he spoke, he came to the side of the ship and looked down at the clouds. He also released his divine sense and looked down. Du Fan. Quick. Let's move the airship and stop below. Lang Hua's voice changed slightly, with a trace of surprise. Du Fan, who was looking down with his divine sense, quickly turned back. What's wrong? Du Fan turned back and saw that his expression had changed slightly. Following his gaze, he saw that about 10 meters in front of their airship, there was a whirlpool in the sky. The whirlpool was extremely large, and it was pitch black inside. It made whistling sounds in the wind and rain. It was as if there was a suction force, sucking their airship into the whirlpool. The airship, which was flying slowly, moved forward much faster. Not good. Hurry and call master. Du Fan exclaimed and asked Leng Hua to call their master. He immediately used his spiritual power to control the airship to turn around and descend. However, they had somewhat underestimated the power of the whirlpool. Even though the spaceship had turned around under Du Fan's control and was descending, the whirlpool's suction was still extremely terrifying. It was as if there was a pair of hands inside the whirlpool that was pulling them in. The spaceship was uncontrollably pulled toward the whirlpool. Moreover, because it was being forcefully sucked in, the airship tilted slightly. This movement was felt by the three children who were cultivating in the side room. They quickly ran out to see what was going on. Hurry and go in. Don't come out. Leng Hua pushed them in, afraid that they would encounter an accident when they came out. Therefore, the three children were pushed back into the cabin by Leng Hua as soon as they took a step out. Moreover, because of the tilting of the airship, they could not stand steadily and fell around. Master! Master! Chapter 46-67. Fengjiu was refining pills in her space. Just as she was about to open the furnace, she heard Leng Hua's anxious calls and knocks on the door. She hurriedly came out. However, the moment she opened the door, she saw darkness and a little dizzy. She couldn't even stand steadily and swayed with the violent shaking of the ship. At that moment, she felt a powerful force pulling the spaceship forcefully, and the spaceship lost its balance and was sucked in. After a moment of dizziness, she felt the barrier of the spaceship break with a bang, and the spaceship fell down from a high place. Oh no! Du Fan, Leng Hua, quickly stabilize the ship with me. Leng Hua, take care of the three children. Don't let them out. Fengjiu immediately shouted. Seeing that the situation was not good, she immediately flew out of the spaceship and came to the bottom of the spaceship to quickly stabilize it. The moment she shouted, Du Fan and Leng Shuang quickly took action. They each held on to the three corners of the spaceship. However, even though they had used their spiritual energy to protect the spaceship, they could not withstand the powerful force of the spaceship. As a result, when the spaceship was pressed down, they could only slow down the force of the falling spaceship and minimize the damage to the minimum. Bang, bang, bang. The ship landed on the ground but did not stop immediately. Instead, it slid on the ground for about 10 meters and knocked down many trees before coming to a stop due to the friction between the sand and stones. Fengjiu, Du Fan, and Leng Hua came out from the side of the ship. Seeing that the ship had stabilized, they finally heaved a sigh of relief. Thinking of the three children on the ship, Fengjiu immediately jumped onto the ship. How are the children? Fengjiu quickly stepped forward and asked. Only then did Leng Hua open the door of the room where the children were. He saw Hao hugging Mu Chen and Mu Yu. The three of them hugged each other tightly as they sat on the ground. Their faces were pale and panicked. After seeing them, they seemed to heave a sigh of relief and quickly stood up. Mother! The three children threw themselves at Fengjiu, clearly frightened. I'm fine, I'm fine. Are you hurt? Fengjiu asked, looking at the three children one by one to see if they were injured by the violent shaking of the ship. No, we fell on the deck and didn't stand up, so we weren't injured. Hao said. Yes, no injuries. Mu Chen and Mu Yu nodded and said. That's good. Fengjiu breathed a sigh of relief and touched their little faces. At this time, as if he thought of something, he led them out of the cabin and came to the outside. Looking at this unfamiliar place, he could not help but frown. Previously, he had only been focused on stabilizing the spacecraft that was being flung downwards, so he didn't have time to look around carefully. Now that he looked around, he realized that this place was full of strangeness and oppression. Moreover, it was noon when they were there, but here, it was pitch black. The surroundings were quiet and no other sounds could be heard. There was no spiritual aura in the air either. It was as if they were in a place that was isolated from spiritual aura. Master, a whirlpool suddenly appeared in the sky earlier. We quickly turned the ship around, but we were sucked in too late, Du Fan said. At this time, he also looked around and felt that this place seemed a little strange. Chapter 46-68. He went into the cabin this morning and told us not to disturb him. He hasn't come out since, Leng Shuang said as he looked at the tightly shut cabin door. Hearing this, Feng Jiu frowned slightly, but he didn't check. Instead, he walked to the bow of the ship and looked around. He saw that they seemed to be in a cave in the mountains. Other than some trees and weeds, they were surrounded by high peaks that reached into the clouds. Du Fan and Leng Hua, you two go and check the surroundings. See if there are any people nearby and where we are now, Feng Jiu instructed the two of them. Yes, the two of them responded. They gathered their qi and flew off on their swords. Feng Jiu looked at the sky and immediately gathered spiritual energy in her hands to set up a boundary to protect the ship. However, just as she was setting up the boundary, her heart skipped a beat. She looked at her hands and her eyes flashed. Don't run around. Don't get off the ship, Feng Jiu looked at the three children and instructed them. Okay, we know. The three children responded seriously. Seeing her walk to the closed cabin door and knock, they followed behind her and watched. Knock knock. Feng Jiu knocked twice. There was no sound from inside. She called out, if you don't open the door, I'm going in. She waited for a while, but there was no movement inside. Thus, she used her divine thought and pressed her hand on the door. The next moment, she pushed it open. The cabin wasn't small. Other than a bed for resting, there was space for other things. She walked in and scanned the room. Her gaze fell on the figure sitting cross-legged on the bed. There was an aura around the figure. It was obvious that he had set up a boundary to protect his body. At this moment, there was only an extremely weak aura around his body. He sat there with his eyes closed. It was as if he had entered a state of meditation and was not aware of anything in the outside world. Feng Jiu glanced at him and remembered some things he mentioned. She stopped and said to the three children behind her, you guys go out first. Okay. Although the three children were curious, they listened to her and left. After the three children went out, Feng Jiu stepped forward and observed him for a while. After confirming that his divine soul was not in his body at this time, she frowned. Without breaking the boundary that protected his body, she turned and walked out. She remembered him saying that because this body wasn't his original body, he couldn't stay here for a long time. Moreover, every once in a while, his soul would have to return to his original body. She just didn't expect that she would encounter this today. Thinking of the situation she sensed just now, her heart sank. It seemed that she had to leave this place as soon as possible. On the other side, Du Fan and Leng Hua, who had gone to investigate the surroundings, were flying through the night on their swords. Suddenly, the two of them felt that their flying speed was gradually slowing down, and their bodies seemed to be getting heavier. Something doesn't seem right. Before Leng Hua could finish speaking, his vision turned black and he fainted. Leng Hua! Du Fan shouted. The spiritual aura on his body surged. However, at that moment, a dark green flame appeared in front of him and was extinguished. Almost at that moment, his spiritual aura seemed to be suppressed. His vision darkened and he lost consciousness and fell. Chapter 46-69. On the airship, Feng Jiu frowned. She looked around and didn't see Du Fan and Leng Hua. She had a bad premonition. She summoned her contracted beasts from her space. Fire Phoenix, Cloud Swallow. 3 rays of light came out. After the light disappeared, the fire phoenix and 2 cloud swallow beasts appeared in front of her. What happened? Fire phoenix looked around. When she sensed the aura here, her voice changed. It's demonic aura. Demonic aura? Fengjiu raised her eyebrows. I only felt that the aura here was a little strange. Moreover, I gradually couldn't use my spiritual power. I didn't expect it to be demonic aura. Beasts were very sensitive to demonic aura. Since the fire phoenix said so, then it must be true. Du Fan and Leng Hua went out to scout and still haven't returned. I'm worried that something happened to them. You guys stay here and guard. I'll go take a look. Fengjiu said. Just as she was getting off the airship, she heard a voice. Wait a minute. Hearing this voice, Fengjiu was slightly surprised. She turned around and saw that the masked man had already come out. Seeing this, she said, didn't you have an out-of-body experience before? I thought that you wouldn't be able to come back here. She didn't expect that he would be able to wake up. I also didn't expect that something would happen in such a short time. You were actually brought to this demon realm by them. The masked man sighed and slowly walked out. He looked at you, and paused for a moment. Then he looked at Fengjiu. I have to take them away. This place is not suitable for them. Fengjiu was silent for a moment. She looked at the 3 children. After a while, she asked, You said that this is the demon realm? I found that the aura of spiritual power here is restricted. How are you going to take them away? At present, the blood curse on you, and Chen, has not been completely removed. The longer you stay in the demon realm, the more difficult it will be for you to use your spiritual energy. Now that we're here, I can still take them away, but it's hard to say if we stay any longer. Also, I received news that they want to trap you here forever. In this place, even with your strength, I'm afraid it will be difficult to open a corner of the sky and return to your original place. I'm not leaving. I don't want to leave Mother. Wherever Mother is, you, will be there. You shouted loudly, and hugged to her mother's side, tightly hugging her leg. I'm not leaving either. Mother is in danger now, I won't leave. I want to be with my mother. How, said and stood beside Fengjiu. I won't leave even if you beat me to death. Mu Chen also came to Fengjiu's side and held her hand tightly. He looked at the masked man warily. We're not leaving. I will never go with you. Even if this is the demon realm, we still want to be with Mother. We don't want Mother to be in danger. Hearing this, Fengjiu couldn't help but sigh softly. He touched Yu's head and said, It's dangerous here. Sooner or later, you will worship him as your master. Leaving with your master is also a good thing. No. No. I don't want to. Yu said with red eyes. She looked up at her mother pitifully. Mother, Yu doesn't want to leave Mother. Yu doesn't want to, don't. Chapter 46-70. Hearing this, the masked man who was about to step forward stopped. His deep gaze looked at the little girl who was like a little beast. Seeing that her eyes were slightly red and filled with anger and vigilance, he sighed in his heart and a trace of helplessness flashed through his eyes. Only then did he look at Fengjiu and said, Aren't you going to look for them? Go. We'll wait for you here. Seeing this, Fengjiu looked at him and patted the 3 children beside her and said, You guys wait here obediently. Mother will go look for Du Fan and Leng Hua. Mother, you must come back safely. We'll wait for you here. Yu's young and tender voice carried a unique softness of a child. With a worried look, she pulled her mother's hand and said, My brothers and I will wait here for Mother to come back. If Mother doesn't come back, we won't go anywhere. Fengjiu's heart warmed and she rubbed her little head and said, Okay, be good. Mother will be back very soon. She looked at the masked man and said, I'll have to trouble you. After saying this, she took a deep breath and stepped out of the airship and went in the direction Du Fan and the others had gone. Shuttling back and forth in the night, she felt that the demonic aura in the air was getting heavier and heavier. In the night, other than the sound of the wind, there seemed to be no other sound. However, at this time, she suddenly stopped and looked back. At this time, she could no longer see the location of the spaceship, as if it was covered by a thin fog. She thought of the 3 children on the spaceship, and then remembered that the Fire Phoenix and the masked man were guarding the spaceship. Thus, she did not stop and went forward. Leng Hua. Feng Jiu called out in surprise. She saw that the person sitting in the grass in front of her was Leng Hua, who had gone out with Du Fan just a moment ago. However, at this time, he was sitting in a daze and his whole face was lifeless and lifeless. Seeing this, she quickly went forward. "What's the matter? You guys met." She pushed his shoulder with her hand, but just as she touched him, her voice stopped, and her whole body quickly retreated. Xiu xiu. 2 vines sprang out as if they were alive. If she hadn't retreated at that moment, she would have been tied up. Looking again, Leng Hua, who was sitting in a daze on the grass, suddenly changed into the appearance of a big tree. The trunk of the big tree was about 2 people hugging it. There weren't many branches and leaves, but they were swaying. Leng Hua's face appeared to be struggling inside the tree. What a good demonic tree. Looking at this scene, Feng Jiu's eyes turned cold. She stretched out her hand and the Qing Feng sword, which was glowing with a green light, appeared in her hand. As the spirit force in her palm surged, flames surged. The red figure rose up, raised the sword in her hand high up, and slashed down fiercely at the demon tree below. Suddenly, the humanoid face on the tree let out a shrill shriek. As soon as the shriek rang out, Feng Jiu's hand involuntarily trembled, and the sword in her hand slashed to the side. Chapter 46-71. The sound was like oil coming into contact with fire, producing a sizzling sound. As the flames burned in the air, the demonic aura gradually decreased. Some of the demonic aura and some of the surrounding trees quickly retreated as if they were afraid of being touched by the flames. Even the demonic tree wanted to take the opportunity to escape. Feng Jiu retracted her aura and hid in the darkness to chase after the demonic tree. She didn't extinguish the flames on this side and let it continue to burn. She took a deep breath and directly pierced the body of the demonic tree with the Qing Feng sword stand in her hand. When the sharp sword pierced, with a whoosh, green liquid flowed out. At the same time, the demonic tree let out a blood-curdling scream. The body of the tree slowly shrunk until it finally became a human-sized tree stump. "Speak, where is my man?" Feng Jiu shouted. She pulled out the Qing Feng sword and pointed it at the demonic tree. As she increased her strength, the sharp sword tip pierced into the human-shaped tree stump. Slivers of liquid seeped out, accompanied by the pleading of the demonic tree. Don't kill me, I'll bring you there." It hurriedly begged for mercy, afraid that its hundreds of years of cultivation would be destroyed. However, the tree demon led the way in front. As they walked, Feng Jiu glanced at the ground without batting an eyelid. She secretly gathered a wisp of flame in her palm. In the next moment, she suddenly struck out her palm and slapped the ground beside her that seemed to be pitch black with nothing else. Bang! Ah! With a bang, the palm wind and flames struck down. Following that, a blood-curdling scream rang out. Some black liquid splashed out from the ground. Feng Jiu waved her hand and swept the splashed liquid to the other side. The demonic tree wanted to take the opportunity to escape. She coldly snorted. With a sweep of the Qing Feng sword in her hand, she cut off the branches on the human-shaped tree stump. Ah! The demonic tree was shocked. It instinctively squatted down. Seeing the branches on the ground, it trembled and turned its head back. It said to Feng Jiu, I can't bring you to the front. Otherwise, the demonic king will kill me. Then you're not afraid that I'll kill you? Or, do you want to have a taste of being burned as firewood? Fengjiu glanced at it, playing with a cluster of flames in his hand, and threatened in a cold voice. Looking at the lithe heavenly flame, the tree demon was scared. He shrank his body and said, "No, I'll take you there. I'll take you there, okay?" Only then did it accept its fate and lead Fengjiu forward. When they arrived in front of a big tree, it shrank back and said, "Go in there. It's right there." Fengjiu looked at the place the tree demon was pointing at. It was a huge, lush tree. The trunk of the tree would probably need 7 or 8 people to surround it. The demonic aura around the tree was slightly thicker, but other than that, there was nothing special about it. "How do we get in?" Fengjiu asked. "Turn left and right around the tree trunk. Then, hit the tree trunk and shout, 'Open.' Then, it will open." The dryad whispered as it observed its surroundings. "Underground palace?" Fengjiu raised his eyebrows. "Yes, yes. Your 2 people were caught by the demonic empress herself. They were caught inside. The demonic empress loves to absorb the essence of cultivators. If you don't want to see them reduced to bones, you better go in quickly," the tree demon said as it retreated. It was afraid that Fengjiu would come to settle the score with it. Fengjiu glanced at it and followed its instructions. He circled left and right around the tree. Finally, he hit the tree trunk and shouted, "Open." Chapter 46-72. It was an underground palace. As she walked down the stairs, she could faintly hear sounds coming from inside. On the walls on both sides, clusters of faint green will-o'-the-wisps floated, illuminating the path beneath her feet. The faint green will-o'-the-wisp's glow also added a strange aura to the place. The will-o'-the-wisps danced inside, and there was also a flow of aura in the air. Clearly, this underground palace had more than one entrance. Somewhere, it should be connected to the outside world. Unexpectedly, after she entered, she did not see a single demon. As she walked, she realized that this underground palace led to a cave in the mountain. It seemed that on the other side, a large group of demons had gathered. She stood close to the stone wall, slightly tilting her body to look at the place where the will-o'-the-wisps floated. She saw that the sound she heard earlier was coming from there. At this moment, there were about 100 demons of different shapes and sizes. In the middle of those demons, who else could it be but Du Fan and Leng Hua? Seeing that the 2 of them seemed to have fainted and were unconscious, but seeing them being hung upside down by those demons, a trace of anger arose in her heart. Her gaze swept across, and landed on 2 great demons among those demons. One of them was a demoness with heavy makeup and a seductive face. The demonic aura on her body was extremely strong. Not to mention her seductive appearance, just the demonic aura on her body made it hard for people to ignore her. On the other hand, the face of the one at the side couldn't be seen clearly. It was as though there was a layer of mist covering his face. One could only feel a powerful demonic aura emanating from his body. Needless to say, these 2 should be the Demon King and Demon Empress that the tree demon mentioned. Just as she was thinking about how to save Du Fan and Leng Hua, she heard a voice coming from inside. "Why did you bring these 2 people back? They are the subordinates of that ghost Dr. Fengjiu. If you capture her people, she will definitely come looking for you. Won't you be causing trouble then?" The Demon King's voice carried some worry. Looking at the 2 cultivators who were hung upside down, he said to the Demon Empress beside him, "Let them go. Just pretend that you don't know that they are here." When the Demon Empress heard this, she raised her coquettish eyes and glanced at him. "Put it back. Don't forget that the immortals up there told us to take care of them. If we let them leave just like that, how are we going to explain it to them?" She paused and played with her bright red nails. "Besides, even if we let them go, those immortals won't let us go. Besides, they said that as long as we succeed, we will be rewarded." "Humph. How could the words of those people be taken seriously? In my opinion, they want to borrow the hands of that ghost Dr. Fengjiu to exterminate our Yao clan. Otherwise, why would they send them to us instead of other places? Was Fengjiu a pushover? She's the Lord of heaven and earth. Back then, when the Devil Lord fought with her, he ended up with his soul scattered. Our strength isn't even as strong as the Devil Lord, and she doesn't have any conflict of interest with us. Why should we provoke her? The Demon King said coldly. Looking at Du Fan and Leng Hua, he said to the Demon Empress, "Let them go. Let them leave as soon as possible." Chapter 46-73. How can that be the same? Just listen to me. There won't be a mistake. The Demon King said. I really want to meet her, but I'm afraid she won't come. The Demon Empress chuckled and didn't take the Demon King's words to heart. Fengjiu listened for a moment and her heart moved. She quietly retreated to a dark corner and took out a talisman from her spatial zone. With a twist of her hand, the talisman flew out. Not long later, her voice came from the direction she came from. Hand over my people. The voice came from the other side and echoed because of the underground palace. The voice was cold and carried killing intent. In an instant, the hundreds of demons were shocked and quickly dispersed. Not good. It must be that Fengjiu. The Demon King was shocked and his voice carried a trace of panic. He didn't want to be enemies with Fengjiu and didn't want to fight with her. If they fought their way in, then what are you afraid of? I'll go meet her. The Demon Empress snorted and twisted her body like a water snake. She said to the small demons, leave a few to watch. The rest, follow me. Yes. As soon as the order was given, the demons followed the Demon Empress and walked towards the palace in a grandiose manner. When they moved forward, Fengjiu flashed and came to the side of Du Fan and Leng Hua. She slashed with the sharp blade in her hand and killed a few demons that were guarding at the side. With a slash of the green-edged sword Qi, she put them down. You. The Demon King was originally sitting and sighing when he suddenly saw a red figure flash out. He was instantly shocked. When he looked closely, he saw that the person was dressed in red and had an extremely beautiful appearance. Her aura was restrained, but her entire body was emitting a powerful and intimidating aura. Even though he had never seen Fengjiu before, he knew that this woman was definitely the ghost Dr. Fengjiu. You're the ghost Dr. Fengjiu. The Demon King looked at her, and the face in the mist gradually revealed its facial features. It was not outstanding, but on the contrary, it was a little scary. At this moment, it was staring at Fengjiu. Fengjiu ignored it. Instead, he pinched Leng Hua and Du Fan's Renzhong acupuncture points to wake them up. If she wasn't worried that those demons would attack them, she wouldn't even have to waste an incarnation talisman to lure them away. Master. When the two of them woke up, they were startled for a moment. They quickly got up, but they felt that their legs were a little numb, as if it was caused by a blockage of blood and qi. It's good that you're awake. As Fengjiu spoke, he looked at the Demon King and said, from what you said just now, someone wants to borrow your hands to kill me? Do you know who they are? As she spoke, she slowly walked forward. Her green-tipped sword, which was suffused with a sharp green glow, was pointed diagonally at the ground as she approached step by step. The Demon King's strength wasn't weak, but he didn't want to be Fengjiu's enemy, so he didn't want to attack. He hurriedly said, let's talk things over. I want to know, who exactly are those people you're talking about? Fengjiu asked. They. As soon as the Demon King's voice was heard, there was a commotion. Kill them. The Demon Empress' voice was heard, and she ordered the small demons to go forward. The reason why Du Fan and Leng Hua were hit at the beginning was probably because they were careless and didn't expect that it would be these monsters. At this moment, seeing these monsters attacking them, Du Fan sneered and said, then let's see who kills who. Chapter 46-74. Swish. Clang. Bang. 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 For a moment, the sharp sound of air currents, the sound of swords clashing, and the heavy sound of attacks resounded in the underground palace. The scene instantly became chaotic. Over 100 demons surrounded Fengjiu and the other two. Green demon blood splattered all over the ground. Screams and roars echoed in the underground palace, lingering for a long time. Stop fighting, stop fighting. All of you, stop. The Demon King roared loudly. However, Fengjiu and the others wouldn't listen to him. The demons covered their heads and fled in all directions. Seeing that they couldn't escape, they could only fight to the death. Some of them revealed their true forms to fight. However, facing Fengjiu, Du Fan, and Leng Hua, these demons' combat strength was still too weak. The only ones who could fight against them were probably the Demon King and the Demon Empress. Looking at the dead little demons on the ground, a trace of bloodthirsty savagery flashed through the Demon Empress' eyes. She stared at Fengjiu's peerlessly beautiful face and looked at her body, revealing a strange smile. She spread out her hands and twisted her body, transforming into a snake demon with a human face and a snake body. As the snake body and hands moved, a faint hissing sound could be heard amidst the chaos. Fengjiu looked down and saw a snake slithering out from the ground. Some were as thin as chopsticks, some were the size of a finger, and some were 2 fingers wide. These snakes were brightly colored, and some even had bright crowns on their heads. Just by looking at the color of these snakes, one could tell that they were extremely poisonous. Although the 3 of them had poison-resistant physiques, and even poison couldn't do anything to them, no one was willing to be bitten by these snakes. Thus, when Fengjiu slashed out a sword qi with the Qingfeng sword in her hand, she raised the flame in her palm and injected it into the sword qi. The flame followed the sword qi and suddenly shot out with a whoosh, burning the ground. "Get behind me!" Fengjiu shouted clearly, telling Du Fan and Leng Hua to return to her side. When the two heard her voice, they simultaneously leaped up and quickly came to their master's side. However, just as they stood behind her, they saw a red figure rush out, heading straight for the Demon Empress. Seeing Fengjiu make a move, the Demon King instinctively wanted to help. However, after taking a step forward, he stopped. Ghost Dr. Fengjiu was the master of heaven and earth. Even in the demon realm, he had heard of her powerful methods. Her strongest point wasn't her heaven-defying alchemy skills, but her shocking combat strength. How many experts had to die in her hands for her name, Ghost Dr. Fengjiu, to spread throughout the world? He didn't dare to provoke her, nor did he dare to make her his enemy. Because he knew that if he made her his enemy, he would be the one to die in the end. He just didn't expect that the people above would trick them. They sent Fengjiu here. Whether Fengjiu killed them or they killed Fengjiu, it was a win-win situation for those people. But now, things had developed to this point, and he couldn't stop it. He knew that the Demon Empress would definitely die. If he dared to make a move, even he would definitely die under Fengjiu's sword. Ah! Chapter 46-75. Green demonic blood splattered as the Demon Empress' head was chopped off and flew out, rolling among the demons. One of the demons didn't seem to be able to react as it blankly reached out to catch the flying head. Just like that, it looked at the Demon Empress' head and her eyes that were wide open with fear and unwillingness. It was so frightened that it shrieked. Ah! Following that shriek, the little demon instinctively threw the Demon Empress' head up to someone else. This time, no one stood there foolishly to catch the demon head. Instead, they automatically retreated and allowed the Demon Empress' head to fall to the ground and roll a few times until it stopped moving. The surrounding demons didn't dare to make a single sound. They widened their eyes in shock and fear as they watched the Demon Empress' head being chopped off. They watched as the Demon Empress' snake body fell to the ground with a bang and was stepped on by the red-clothed human lady. Then, the green glowing sword in her hand directly and ruthlessly stabbed down. Just like that, she cut open the Demon Empress' stomach in front of all the demons and took out the Demon Empress' snake gallbladder and her inner core. Even if they were demons, they were so shocked by that bloody and cruel scene that their faces turned pale. They swallowed their saliva and retreated, afraid that they would end up like the Demon Empress. The Demon King was also shocked by that scene. It didn't expect that Fengjiu would directly take out the Demon Empress' snake gallbladder and inner core without saying anything. Furthermore, she cut open the Demon Empress' stomach in front of all the demons. That scene and that method shocked even the Demon King. Does anyone still want to die? I don't mind sending it on its way. Fengjiu turned around and swept her cold gaze across all the demons before finally landing on the Demon King. Being swept by her gaze, all the demons instinctively retreated and didn't dare to make a sound. The Demon King looked at the dead Demon Empress and seemed to want to say something. In the end, it only turned into a sigh. I advised it not to go against you. I didn't expect. Fengjiu looked at him coldly and said, "You have no intention of opposing me. Even if you are a demon, I will not attack you. However, if you want to avenge your Demon Empress, I will naturally accompany you." The underground flames were still burning. The demons avoided the flames and looked at their Demon King. I naturally do not wish to go against the Ghost Doctor. The Demon King sighed and said, "The Demon Empress is in the wrong for capturing your men. Now that you have killed her, I hope that Ghost Physician can be magnanimous and let my little demons go. As for what Ghost Physician wants to know, I will tell you everything I know." Fengjiu's eyes flickered when she heard this. She glanced at the Demon King and immediately waved her hand to extinguish the burning flames. However, as the flames were extinguished, the smell of burnt flesh wafted out from the ground. It was very pungent. "Ghost Physician, this way please," the Demon King said and gestured for them to enter. Fengjiu saw and followed him forward. Behind them, Du Fan and Leng Hua followed unhurriedly. They followed the Demon King to a cave abode. It was a cave abode at the bottom of a mountain. Unlike the underground palace, it looked more like a place where the Demon King cultivated. "Ghost Physician, have a seat." Chapter 46-76. His voice paused for a moment, a trace of hesitation could be seen on his face. Then, as if he had made up his mind about something, he clenched his teeth and said, "I didn't want things to turn out this way. I didn't want to be enemies with the Ghost Doctor, and I didn't know that they would send her to our demon realm. We only found out after she came to our side. Those people above want us to kill you, and the Demon Empress didn't even discuss with me before capturing your two subordinates." Fengjiu interrupted him, "I already know all this. What I want to know is about those people who want to kill me. Those four are the four great experts of the immortal realm, also known as the four great emperors. That's all I know, I don't know anything else. After all, the immortal realm isn't a place where we can go." The Demon King said, indicating that he didn't know much else. "Four great emperors?" Fengjiu's eyes flashed. After a moment of silence, he asked, "I saw a barrier set up in the sky of the demon realm. Now that we want to leave, do you have a way to send us away?" "Of course, I can send you away." Hearing that she wanted to leave, the Demon King's heart relaxed. This killing god, he didn't dare to let her stay in the demon realm. Since she was willing to leave, he would naturally send her away as soon as possible. "Then let's go. My flying ship is parked some distance away from here. If you send us away, we'll drop this matter," Fengjiu said slowly, glancing at the surrounding demons. And so, Fengjiu led the Demon King, Du Fan, Leng Hua, and the others in the direction of the flying ship. At the flying ship, the surroundings were pitch black. Demon Qi was surging in the air, and faintly, there was a little bit of green light floating in the air. The masked man stood at the bow of the ship with the three children by his side. Leng Hua also stood at the side, waiting for her master to return. The surroundings were quiet, and no one on the airship spoke. Fire Phoenix landed on the shoulder of Mu Chen and also didn't speak. The two cloud-swallowing beasts were lying on the side. Perhaps feeling that the atmosphere was somewhat oppressive, Yu pulled the robe of the masked man. Feeling his robe being pulled, he turned around and lowered his head to look at the little guy beside him. Seeing her delicate and cute little face, his eyes couldn't help but soften as he asked, "What's wrong? Will anything happen to my mother?" Yu raised her head and asked. Her beautiful eyes were filled with worry. Hearing this, his lips curled into a smile. "No, with your mother's strength, even if she were to meet the ruler of the demon realm, she would still be able to win." "Then can we leave from here?" Yu asked again. "Don't worry. As long as I am not here, nothing will happen. Moreover, your mother is also not someone to be trifled with, so even if it is somewhat troublesome, in the end, we will definitely leave this place safely." He rubbed the head of Yu and revealed a smile. "Then are the people who want to harm us very powerful? My mother can't beat them now. Since you're so powerful, then do you know where my father is now? When will he come back?" Yu grabbed the hand that was rubbing her head and threw out one question after another. Children shouldn't think too much, these questions are useless. He smiled but didn't answer her. Chapter 46-77. Seeing the great demon behind Fengjiu, the masked man's eyes flashed with a smile as he muttered, "Looks like things are going to be interesting from now on." The archfiend followed Fengjiu to the outside of the ship. When he saw the ancient mythological beast Fire Phoenix and the two sacred beasts, his eyes narrowed. He didn't go in, but said to Fengjiu, "Ghost Doctor, you guys go in. I'll send you guys out." "Okay." Fengjiu replied and brought Du Fan and Leng Hua into the barrier. "Mother! Mother, you're back! Mother!" The three children quickly came to her side. Seeing that she had returned safely, the three of them revealed happy smiles. "You're back. Let's go. Mother will bring you guys into the cabin. The archfiend will send us out, but the ship will probably still shake." She took the three children into the cabin, but she didn't let them stay in the cabin. Instead, she directly sent them into the space. After closing the cabin door, Fengjiu walked out and gestured for Du Fan and the others to sit down so that they wouldn't be shaken out. The masked man stood at the front of the ship. He glanced at Fengjiu and said, "It looks like I still underestimated you." Fengjiu glanced at him and slowly said, "You should be glad that we're not enemies." Hearing this, the masked man smiled and looked at the sky. "Indeed, those who are your enemies should be restless right now." Fengjiu didn't say anything. Because at this moment, the archfiend outside the ship was emitting a huge amount of demonic qi. His figure instantly became 10 times bigger, as if he was holding up the sky. He let out a low roar and his hands tore a hole in the sky. The hole was pushed open by the demonic qi, as if it wanted to close but couldn't. The Demon King stretched out his hand and lifted the spaceship that was parked below and sent it through the exit in the sky. As the spaceship was sent out, the opening behind it also closed as if it had never appeared. "We're back." Fengjiu looked at the familiar sky. At this moment it was already dark, but the sky was dotted with stars. The spiritual energy in the air faintly flowed. The aura was so familiar. She smiled and controlled the ship to fly slowly while walking into the cabin. Not long after, she brought the three children out. "Mother, we're back." Yu happily jumped up and down on the ship. Fengjiu smiled and bent down to pick her up. She looked at the masked man. 2 more days. I'll accompany them for 2 days. After 2 days, you can take them away." She also knew that the current situation was not suitable for the three children to be by her side. Even if she was reluctant to part with them, they would have to part in the end. Yu's mother. Mother's mother's mother's. Her mother two's on her on. Fengjiu sighed softly and said, be good. Mother is doing this for your own good. You saw what happened today. This isn't the first time, and it won't be the last. If you follow mother, sooner or later, you'll encounter danger again. Listened to her and didn't say anything. Hao and Mu Chen, who were standing at the side, lowered their heads and closed their eyes. It was unknown what they were thinking. Chapter 46-78. The masked man curled his lips when he heard the word master from the little girl's mouth. He smiled and said, "Little girl, it seems that you will only call me master when you need my help. Unfortunately, even I am unable to fulfill your request. Why can't you do it? Didn't you say you were very powerful?" Asked. He chuckled. "No matter how powerful I am, I can't block the light of her star of the phoenix. If I bring her up to the immortal realm, it will really be a mess up there." He looked at Fengjiu and said, "Although I can't bring you up there, you can ascend on your own in the future. By then, you should have the ability to fight with those people. You will only be useful when you ascend. If you ascend now, you can only flee everywhere. Just help me protect the 3 children. I don't need to trouble you with anything else. If I want to ascend, I will naturally be able to do so." "There's no need to rush," Fengjiu said. He looked at him and said, 2 days. You can take them with you in 2 days. Okay. He didn't say much and directly agreed. In the next 2 days, Fengjiu spent most of his time with the 3 children. He taught them some things and gave them some things to store in their space as a precaution. They especially cherished the time they had left together. However, no matter how reluctant they were, the day had finally arrived. Early in the morning, the flying ship was still slowly flying. Everyone on the ship gathered at the bow and looked at the masked man and the 3 children. "Mother, what should we do when we miss you in the future?" Threw herself into Fengjiu's arms with tears in her eyes. Although Hao and Mu Chen didn't say anything, their eyes were also red. They stood quietly at the side and looked at their mother as if they wanted to engrave her face in their minds. "It's okay. When you get there, listen to your master's words and cultivate. After sending you off, I will also go into seclusion for a period of time. When the time is right, I will prepare to ascend. When everything is settled, I will personally look for you," she said softly, comforting their young and uneasy hearts. "Mother, what about father? Will father come with mother to find us?" Mu Chen couldn't help but ask. "We will. Mother and your father will come to look for you. So before that, you must be obedient and don't run around. Take good care of yourselves and don't distract mother and father." Fengjiu held his hand and then Hao hers. He put their hands together and said, "You 3 siblings must support each other and grow up safely." Yes. Mother, we understand. We will definitely be obedient." The 3 of them nodded heavily as they spoke, their eyes full of seriousness. "You can keep this item. Maybe it can help you in the future." The masked man handed something to Fengjiu. It looked like a seal, but it also looked like an immortal tool. Fengjiu did not refuse and took it with both hands. "Thank you. In the future, the 3 children will have to trouble you." "Okay, then we will go first. In the future, we will meet in the immortal realm." As he spoke, he glanced at Fengjiu and formed an ancient seal with both hands. He pointed at the 3 children's eyebrows. With a flash of golden light, the 3 children disappeared. Chapter 46-79. Fengjiu stared blankly as the golden light disappeared into the sky along with the 3 children. Her heart was filled with reluctance and disappointment. She stood at the bow of the ship and watched silently for a long time before returning to the cabin. "I'm going to rest for a bit, call me when we reach Heavenly Mountain." Du Fan, Ling Hua, and Ling Shuang sighed in their hearts. They also couldn't bear for the three little masters to leave, but they also knew that leaving was the best option for them. In the upper immortal realm, in a palace, four great experts were sitting together discussing matters. Didn't you say that Fengzhou was sent to the demon realm? Why did I hear that the demon king sent her back? What the hell is going on? Did you not send someone to investigate? A man in black robes who looked to be in his 30s asked in a deep voice. His eyes were as sharp as a blade, making it hard for others to look straight at him. Who knew that the demon king would be so cowardly? He didn't even dare to take revenge after seeing the demon empress killed, and instead sent Fengzhou's group away. Another person frowned, his dignified face filled with displeasure. What a waste of such a good opportunity. Fengzhou is the destined phoenix star, how could she die so easily in the demon realm? In my opinion, Fengzhou's life should be taken by us, others can't be counted on. The one who spoke was a middle-aged man. He stood up with his hands behind his back and looked at the other three. Just wait. There will always be a chance to take her life. That Xianyuan Mose, didn't he die in our hands? Speaking of that Xianyuan Mose, it said that the spiritual energy in that world hasn't completely dissipated, and is still gradually solidifying. I'm afraid that Xianyuan Mose isn't dead yet, perhaps he's still recuperating somewhere, waiting for an opportunity. Another person frowned in thought, if that's the case, then it's a bit troublesome. The other person took a sip of the spirit tea and said disapprovingly, what trouble? If they want to ascend, they'll have to go through 81 heavenly lightning bolts. Are we afraid we won't have a chance to interfere? No matter how strong they are, can they be stronger than the four of us? That's true. However, the growth of the two of them is too shocking. If they are allowed to grow, they will become the rulers of the world. At that time, how can we still have the status of the four great emperors? A mere little cultivator from the lower realms. Even if he controls a part of the world, if he dares to compete with us, we will naturally not tolerate him. The middle-aged man snorted, if they want to ascend, we'll have to see if they have the ability. They looked at each other and smiled at the same time. They picked up their teacups and took a sip. One of them said, that's right. We are the almighty beings of the world and the great emperors of the four directions. How difficult is it for us to take the lives of those two? If we want them to live, they won't die. If we want them to die, they won't live either. Ha 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 ha. Well said. Come, let me use tea in place of wine to toast you all. Another person laughed heartily and toasted them with a cup of spirit tea. Chapter 4680. They drank spiritual tea and chatted for a while. When they stood up and were about to leave, one of them suddenly stopped and looked back at the three of them. Speaking of which, it seems that there hasn't been much news about Emperor Qing of Cloud Sky Mountain recently. He has never interacted with us, and we haven't paid much attention to him. Why did you suddenly mention him? Another person asked. I just feel like I haven't seen him for a long time. Last year, the South Sea Emperor held a banquet, but I didn't see him. Emperor Qing has always thought highly of himself and never interacted with us. Moreover, I heard that his beloved disciple failed to pass the tribulation and was reduced to ashes. I don't think he'll come out easily. Although we haven't fought against him, I've always heard people say that Emperor Qing is the strongest among all the great emperors. Especially after he came out of seclusion a few years ago, his strength increased greatly. One of them had a serious expression. He sighed softly and said, but fortunately, he doesn't care about the affairs of all the great emperors and has always been a lone wolf. This is good. He won't get in our way. When they heard this, they nodded and didn't say anything else as they walked out. Emperor Qing's strength was unfathomable, but he was also someone who didn't care about the outside world. Since he wouldn't get in their way, they naturally wouldn't pay too much attention to him. Right now, they still had to deal with Fengzhou. The two titles of the Star of the Phoenix and the Master of the World were really a big threat to them. And the person they were afraid of had already arrived at the foot of Sky Mountain in a spaceship. Fengjiu looked at the snow-white Sky Mountain and said to Du Fan and the others, "Wait for me here. I'll go up and take a look." As she spoke, she got out of the spaceship and headed up the mountain. However, what she didn't expect was that when she stepped into the boundary of Sky Mountain and wanted to go up the mountain, she found that she couldn't. Looking at the boundary that appeared because of her touch, her eyes moved slightly and she stopped in her tracks. Only then did she notice that the entire Sky Mountain was covered by the boundary. The powerful boundary was like a transparent cover that protected Sky Mountain. She stared at it in a daze and for a moment, she was a little lost. Was it because of Tian Jizi's death that the boundary of Sky Mountain was activated? Or was it because of something else? Is Mo Chen still on Sky Mountain? Or had he already ascended to become an immortal? Questions surfaced in her mind one after another. However, she didn't forcefully break through the barrier. Instead, she paused for a moment before turning around and walking towards the spaceship. Not long after Fengjiu left, Du Fan and the others also discovered the barrier that had appeared on Tian Shan Mountain. Just as they were feeling surprised, they saw their master return. "Master, are we unable to go up?" Du Fan asked. Fengjiu shook his head and said, "They set up a barrier. I think they don't want anyone to go up." Hearing this, they looked at each other. In the end, Lenghua asked, "Master, where are we going next?" Fengjiu looked at the sky, pondered for a moment, and said, "Go back. Next, I need to find a place to cultivate in seclusion. Investigate and see if you can find out where Mose is. If you have any news, inform me." Chapter 4681. In a certain part of the sea, Xianyuan Mose, who was nowhere to be found, was sleeping in the deep sea. He was surrounded by unfathomable seawater, and his whole body seemed to be surrounded by a bubble. He lay quietly in it, motionless. His breath was extremely weak, as if he was dead. In the deep sea, there were some spiritual fish and sea monsters swimming in the depths of the sea. However, they all naturally avoided the place where Xianyuan Mose was. The bubble on his body was suffused with a gentle light, and its breath was extremely strong. The bubble was suffused with a layer of faint cyan light. In the deep sea, if one did not look carefully, they would not be able to detect it. Those spiritual fish and sea monsters in the deep sea did not dare to approach Xianyuan Mose. However, the spiritual breath in the sea seeped into his body, and he did not feel it at all. He just lay there quietly, sleeping. In the immortal world, at Cloud Sky Mountain, the three children were sleeping in a thatched hut. Perhaps it was the sunlight outside that shone in. Who was on the bed, opened his eyes and sat up. When he saw the simple and crude thatched hut, he was startled for a moment as if he had thought of something. After a while, he came back to his senses. Mu Chen and Mu Yu, who were on the other two beds, rubbed their eyes and sat up as well. "Big brother? What's wrong?" Yu asked. Because she had just woken up, her hair was a little messy. However, even her messy hair made her delicate little face look adorable. "Nothing. I just thought that I should get up and cultivate." said and looked at the sky outside. The morning sun was gentle and warm. It was very comfortable. He got out of bed and said to the two, "You two also get up and wash up. We will go outside to cultivate." "Okay." The two little ones responded and got up to wash up. After a simple wash, Yu came to find Hao with messy hair. "Big brother, help me tie my hair." Hao had just stretched his muscles and bones, and after hearing the sound, he turned around. Seeing Yu with messy hair coming over, he walked over and said, "Yu big brother will teach you how to tie it yourself. Yu properly learn how to tie it, okay?" Hearing this, Yu raised her head and looked at him, then finally nodded her head, "Okay. Yu is so obedient." Hao smiled and praised her. He then led her back to the room and had her sit in front of the bronze mirror while teaching her how to tie her hair. Also earnestly watched and learned. Merely, she couldn't help but ask, "Big brother, how come we haven't seen our master since he came back? How could he just leave us here and not care about us? Does he not want us anymore? If he doesn't want us, will he send us back to mother?" Hearing this, Mu Chen also listened attentively. Ever since they came back, they had not seen the person who brought them here and said that he was their master. Moreover, they had been thrown here to live in the thatched hut for a few days. Other than the three of them, there was no one else here. Chapter 4682. Mu Chen and Mu Yu looked outside, and when they saw the Baifeng divine bird, they didn't say anything. These days, they indeed didn't see their unreliable master, but this divine bird has been guarding them here, and also brought them some spirit feather chicken as food. "Well, do you know how to tie it?" Hao looked at her and asked. Looked at her and nodded with a smile, and knows how to tie it. Moreover, also knows how to braid it. Later on, will tie her own hair. "And, that's good, let's go. Let's go outside to cultivate," he said to the two. "Okay." The two followed him out and went to the open space outside, and followed him to learn each and every move. The Baifeng divine bird, which had been flying in the sky for a while, glanced down at them, then landed on another mountain not far away, watching the three of them gesticulating. At noon, that Baifeng divine bird on the mountain seemed to have sensed something, and looked towards the direction of the main peak, and with a flap of its wings, it flew towards that direction. And at that main peak, the stone door of an immortal's cave slowly opened, and a white figure walked out from inside. His steps were steady and elegant, and along with his walk, his white robe slightly fluttered, as if his body carried an immortal aura, making people unconsciously hold their breath, as if they were afraid of alarming the immortal in the mountain. Other than his outstanding immortal temperament, his appearance was also extremely outstanding. His unforgettable appearance could be said to be a banished immortal. However, his immortal aura was like that of a banished immortal, but because of his pair of peach blossom eyes, it added a bit of evil. His entire body exuded an aura that was both good and evil. His black hair was casually draped over his shoulders, and there wasn't even a hair band to tie his hair, just casually and naturally draped over his shoulders. As he walked out of the immortal's cave, he looked at the sky, and saw that Baifeng divine bird had returned to his side. He then hooked his lips and asked, "How are those three little guys? They came to look for you after they woke up, but they have been cultivating by themselves for the past few days. They tried to run around, but I stopped them. I let them move around the thatched hut. Master, do you want to see them?" The Baifeng divine bird asked, tilting its head to look at him. "It's time to meet them. Go and bring them here," he said as he slowly walked to the stone table under the big tree and sat down. The Baifeng divine bird flapped its wings and flew away. When it came to the three children, it stopped beside them and said, "Come on up. I'll take you to see my master." Hearing this, Hao, Mu Chen, and Mu Yu were startled. They looked at each other and jumped onto the back of the divine bird. Their hands tightly grasped the feathers, and their bodies rose up with the divine bird. They looked around and felt the wind blowing against their faces. Therefore, they closed their eyes. After a while, they felt the Baifeng bird stop. "We're here. Come down." As the Baifeng bird said, it squatted down and let the three children down. The three of them looked around, and their eyes naturally fell on the person sitting under the tree. For a moment, the three of them were slightly startled because they felt that this person didn't look like the master who brought them here. Chapter 4683. Hearing this, the Qin emperor tilted his head slightly, glanced at her, and laughed in spite of himself. "Little girl, have you forgotten your master?" He turned around, raised his hand, and swept the surroundings, saying, "Then look around, do you feel the slightest bit familiar?" After hearing his words, Yu-Er's eyes widened, and her pair of big eyes seemed to be able to speak as she stared at him. After a long while, her soft voice was filled with surprise as she said, "Master? It doesn't look like it. Although that strange master always wears a mask, I can also recognize that he doesn't look like you. Besides, this is the first time I've come here, so how can I feel that it's familiar?" The Qing Emperor smiled and said, "That body was only used when I descended to the mortal world, and it wasn't my real body. This is my real body. Your mother already knew about this matter, but because her spirit was somewhat unstable after she came back, she had to rest for a few days. So, you're the master that we've worshipped." Yu-Er blinked her eyes, still staring at him. She felt that her master's pair of eyes were very good-looking. It was as if he had been smiling all along, making her unable to help but want to smile along with him. "And, it's the real deal." He chuckled, glanced at the three of them, and said, "3 days later, Master will remove the blood curse on your body. At that time, your contracted beasts that are suppressed will also wake up. However, Master wants to tell you that you also know that you're in a dangerous situation. There are many people outside who want to take your lives, and even use you to threaten your mother. You 3 little troublemakers have been handed over to me by your mother. In the future, you must listen to Master's words, and don't provoke unnecessary trouble." And the 3 of them nodded and responded. In addition, Qing Ming Emperor is Master's honorific name. People outside call me Emperor Qing. You must remember, from now on, if anyone asks who your master is, you must say that Qing Ming Emperor of Cloud Sky Mountain is your master. Master's name outside can also protect you from being bullied by various experts," he said indifferently, looking at the 3 children. Seeing that they were listening seriously, he was very satisfied. The corners of his mouth slightly curled up, and a trace of a smile appeared in his eyes. We understand." The 3 of them earnestly said, secretly remembering what he had said. "Also, now that you're under my tutelage, you don't need to use your previous names. I'll give you new names. In the future, when you're outside, you can just use the names I've given you. As for your original names, you must remember not to mention them. Otherwise, you'll get yourself killed. Do you understand?" He continued. "Master." The 3 of them. "Use, Master." Yu-Er curiously. "And from of B." When he said the name Yunqi, his eyes slightly flashed, and he looked towards Yu-Er. This little girl was crooking her head and muttering the name Yunqi. Seeing this, his eyes couldn't help but soften. "Thank you, Master." Hao-Er and Mu-Chen said in unison. They knew that if they changed their names, no one would know that their parents were Xianyuan Mo's and Fengjiu in the future. Chapter 4684. Yes, you'll be called Yunqi. From now on, I'll call you Little Qi. He smiled as if he was in a very good mood. His entire person looked very happy. Hao-Er glanced at him and felt that the name he gave their little sister was a little strange. Moreover, when he called her by her name, his expression was much gentler. Thinking about how he treated their little sister differently during this period of time and the current situation, he suppressed the doubts in his heart and did not ask. Compared to him, he trusted their mother's judgment more. Since their mother allowed them to acknowledge him as their master and follow him here, it was enough to prove that this person could be trusted. Alright, next, I'll tell you about the situation here. He looked at the 3 children and said, "As you can see, there's no one else here other than you 3. Therefore, you have to take care of your own food, clothing, housing, and transportation here. This Cloud Sky Mountain is protected by a boundary array, so outsiders can't enter. Similarly, you can't leave either. He looked at the three of them and walked slowly with his hands clasped behind his back. His lips curled up slightly as he said, however, there are also spiritual medicine fields and spiritual fruit trees in this mountain. The ones that usually take care of the spiritual fruit trees and spiritual medicine fields are all puppets that I made. In this mountain, other than my cave residence, Little Seven's cave residence is ready-made. As for the two of you, you can go back and see which place you like and dig your own cave residence. The stone tables and chairs in the cave residence can also be cut down in the forest behind the mountain to make them. In here, you have to do everything by yourself. Of course. Of course, of course. He paused and looked at the three of them. If you learn how to make puppets, you can also let the puppets help you do these things. Every half a year, I'll give you a small test, and every year, a big test. I'll bring you out to spar with other people. After 2 days, after the blood curse in your body is removed, I'll accompany you down the mountain and take you to the city to buy some things you need. You can prepare and see what you need to buy. In the future, you can leave the mountain once every 3 months, but I'll only take you this time. In the future, when you go down the mountain, you have to go by yourself. Master, then can we go anywhere we want in the entire Cloud Sky Mountain? The little girl blinked her beautiful big eyes and looked at him excitedly. Yes, you can naturally go to Cloud Sky Mountain as you wish. Emperor Qing nodded and said to her, let's go. Master will bring you to take a look at your cave. Okay. You, excitedly answered, then hurriedly pulled her 2 brothers and followed him towards the immortal cave. Following their master, they arrived at an immortal cave. Upon entering that immortal cave, Hao, Mu Chen and Yu, were slightly surprised, because this immortal cave looked as if someone had lived here before. Everything inside was very complete, moreover at the side of this immortal cave, there was also a small kitchen. Master, who used to live here? Hao, asked as he looked at the Qing Emperor, who was looking around the cave abode with his hands behind his back. This is the place where your senior sister used to live in the past. However, she failed to cross the tribulation and turned into ashes. Since then, this place has always been empty. Cyan Emperor said. He looked at Yu, and said, little girl, you will live here in the future. Chapter 4685. Okay, from now on, you will live here. He rubbed her head and said to her, take a look and see if you are lacking anything. After a few days, we will go down the mountain to buy it. Okay. Yu, was all smiles as she answered. Hao, looked at him and asked, Master, can you teach us how to make puppets first? They were still young, so many things were much more difficult for them to do by themselves. If they had puppets, it would be a lot more convenient. Qing Emperor glanced at him and walked out with his hands behind his back. He said, you all, come with me. They followed him to the side of the stone table outside the cave. Seeing him take out several pieces of talisman paper, he took out cinnabar and a brush and placed them on the table. He said to them, first, I will teach you how to use talisman to make puppets. For now, it will be easier for you to learn. Look carefully. He glanced at them and picked up the brush. After dipping it in cinnabar, he drew a rune on the talisman paper. He stopped writing and said to them, draw according to this rune. You must finish it in one stroke. When you lift the brush, you must pour your spiritual energy into the brush. Master, can this be used as a puppet? Yu, curiously looked at that talisman paper. Qing Emperor picked up that talisman paper, activated the talisman, and lightly threw it out. After that talisman landed on the ground, it transformed into a handsome young man. Seeing this, the 3 children couldn't help but open their eyes wide. Their eyes were full of amazement. Go boil a pot of water and make a cup of tea. Qing Emperor instructed. That young puppet complied and turned around to prepare to boil water and make tea. Master, how did you do it? So awesome. Yu, excitedly said. She stepped forward and said, I also want to learn, I also want to learn. Qing Emperor smiled and said, when you draw a talisman paper and activate it, you only need to think about what you want this puppet to look like, and it will transform according to your thoughts. However, this kind of talisman puppet has a time limit. In the future, when you learn how to make high-level puppets, you only need to stuff some crystal stones on it, and it will always listen to your orders. Moreover, it will also be a very good fighter. He stood up, brushed his robe, and said, okay, you all can learn first. He took out some talisman paper from the space and gave it to them. He also took out 2 talisman brushes and some cinnabar. Then, he walked to a cool place. With a wave of his hand, a soft couch appeared in front of him, and he lay on it to rest. Although Mu Chen and Mu Yu were young, they were gifted and had always been intelligent and wise. On the other hand, they practiced. Mu, and as soon as he opened his eyes and looked back, he saw how toss out a talisman. As it activated, the talisman transformed into a man. I didn't expect this child's talent and comprehension to be so outstanding. He only practiced for an afternoon and he actually mastered it. How outstanding would he be when he grew up with such talent in the future? At this moment, he couldn't help but look forward to how amazing his 3 disciples would be when they grew up in the future. Chapter 4686. Mu Chen's eyes lit up with joy when he saw that his brother had finished drawing the talisman. He looked at his brother with adoration. In his heart, he secretly made up his mind to draw seriously and learn as soon as possible. Looked at the person who appeared with a smile on his little face. Yes, I've learned it. Let me teach you. He stepped forward and stood beside the 2. Let's stop here for today. It's getting dark and you've practiced for the whole afternoon. Continue tomorrow. Emperor Qin walked over and looked at the 3. Do you want to eat fasting pills or roast chicken? Master, do you have rice? I want to eat porridge. Yu whispered. No. He shook his head and looked at the little girl's disappointed expression. Remember to buy some spirit rice when you go down the mountain in 2 days. You can also let the puppets plant spirit rice in the spiritual fields on the mountain. Okay. Then we'll buy some seeds and bring them back. She suddenly perked up and smiled with her eyes narrowed. Today, they ate roast chicken in the end. Because Hao and Mu Chen didn't have a cave residence yet, they went back to sleep in a thatched cottage. Yu didn't want to live in a cave residence alone, so she also slept in a thatched cottage with them. The next morning, Hao drew a talisman early in the morning and summoned a puppet to help him open up a cave residence. He and Mu Chen chose a place not far from Yu so that the 3 of them could keep each other company. After arranging for the puppet to open up the cave residence, he came back to teach Mu Chen and Mu Yu how to draw talismans. It should be like this. Look, this is how you draw it. He held a brush and carefully taught. You must inject your spiritual aura into the tip of the brush. Only with the cinnabar on the tip of the brush will the runes have spiritual aura. Big brother, do you think mine looks like it? Mu Chen picked up his own drawing and showed it to him. It's done. This is already a talisman, and it's a second-level one. Hao smiled and praised. Mu Chen is amazing. Because there was no one else in the mountain, they remembered the names their master had given them. They would use them when they left the mountain in the future. When there was no one else in the mountain, they would still use their old names out of habit. Big brother is the best. He's drawing 3rd-level talismans. Mu Chen said, if I continue to draw, I can also draw 3rd-level talismans. Yes, definitely. Hao nodded. While both of them were talking, Yu earnestly drew a talisman. Merely, the talisman she drew was somewhat crooked, moreover, it was also relatively small. But she compared the talisman drawn by their master, and finally determined that the talisman she drew was not wrong. Big brother, look, I've also drawn it. I'm also a second-rank talisman. She happily revealed a smiling face, and waved the talisman in her hand. On the other side, the three of them practiced the talisman for the entire morning. After familiarizing themselves with it, they let the puppet do some work for them. The three of them planned to take the opportunity to walk around Cloud Sky Mountain and familiarize themselves with the various environments here. At the main peak, when Emperor Qing learned that the three of them had already learned how to draw the puppet talisman, his pair of peach blossom eyes curved, and a hint of an expectant smile appeared on his handsome face. Chapter 4687. The Bifong bird, who was lying at the side, didn't even raise its head when it heard his words. It said, "These three people are originally from extraordinary backgrounds, so it's to be expected that they have outstanding talents. Their parents are Xianyuan Mose and Fengjiu. How stupid can their children be? We didn't meet Xianyuan Mose this time, but Fengjiu is indeed not an ordinary person. It's only a matter of time before she becomes an immortal. Those people can't stop her." Emperor Qing said slowly as he looked at the sky and narrowed his eyes. On this day, Hao, Mu Chen, and Mu Yu walked around the entire Cloud Sky Mountain and familiarized themselves with each mountain. At the same time, they also saw the spiritual herbs and some spiritual fruit trees planted in the spiritual fields. They also knew that the entire Cloud Sky Mountain was just as their master had said. Other than the three of them, there was only their master and the Bifong bird. The rest were at most puppets. "Big brother, why don't you think master lives alone in such a big place, but he doesn't take in many disciples like others? Wouldn't there be people to work for him?" Yu asked curiously as she walked while holding her two brothers' hands. Hao held her little hand. As they walked, he said, "Master's personality is mild. He has his reasons for not wanting to open a sect and accept disciples. As his disciples, we shouldn't ask too much about things that we shouldn't. Sometimes, knowing too much isn't beneficial. Big brother, master will help us break the blood curse tomorrow. I'm a little worried." Mu Chen lowered his head and looked at the ground as he walked step by step. Hao gazed at him and said, "There's no need to worry. Master's strength is very strong. Moreover, Mother entrusted us to him and allowed us to take Master as our master. So, he's someone that Mother trusts. So, we have to trust him no matter what he does. Don't worry. Master will definitely break the blood curse." Hearing this, Mu Chen nodded in agreement. Hearing this, Yu smiled and said, "After breaking the blood curse, Master will let us go down the mountain. Big brother, have you thought about what to buy?" Without waiting for the two to speak, she smiled and said, "I want to buy seeds. I want the puppet to help me grow spirit rice. In the future, we will have spirit rice to eat. I also want to buy a lot of things. Are you going to buy a pot or something? When we cook in the future, we will have to buy those, right?" Mu Chen said and looked at Yu. "There seems to be a pot in the small kitchen, but we can buy new ones and put some in the space." The three of them chatted as they walked towards the thatched hut. Perhaps because they had company, the three siblings were always together. Therefore, although they were away from their mother's side, as the days passed, they gradually got used to it. The next morning, they woke up early and washed up. Then, they went to their master's abode on the main peak to wait. Today was the day their master would remove the blood curse for them. They were a little nervous, but also a little expectant. Hao was fine because the blood curse on him had been broken long ago. Today, it was mainly Mu Chen and Mu Yu. However, what they didn't expect was that even though they had arrived early, their master slept until close to noon before waking up. "Come in. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.